Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto was a sensei to an all-female Genin team who all fell for him? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Eye of the Storm. The air in the Hokage's office was thick with the smell of old paper and the quiet hum of a village at peace. Sunlight streamed through the wide window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and casting a warm glow on the weathered face of the sixth Hokage. Kakashi Hatake didn't look up from the folder in his hands, the scarred eye visible above his mask crinkling in a familiar, unreadable expression. Naruto Uzumaki stood before the desk, arms crossed over his chest, his presence filling the room in a way that had nothing to do with his size. The vibrant orange of his youth had been replaced by the deep greens and blacks of a Jonin's flak jacket, but the same restless energy still simmered beneath the surface, now tempered by a quiet confidence that only came from walking through fire and emerging intact. He was no longer the knuckle-headed Genin who had once crashed through that very door. He was a pillar of the village, a hero whose name was spoken with a mixture of awe and affection. A Genin team, Naruto said, his voice a low rumble that was more statement than question. You're first, Kakashi confirmed, finally closing the folder and sliding it across the polished wood of the desk. His gaze lifted, and for a moment, the weight of their shared history passed between them, the echo of bells, the sting of loss, the triumph of a war that had demanded too much from them all. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think you were ready. And, more importantly, if I didn't think they needed you. Naruto picked up the file, his calloused fingers flipping it open. 3 photographs, fresh from the academy, stared back at him. 3 young women on the cusp of the rest of their lives. He scanned the names, the brief, clinical summaries of their abilities. Akari Hino, civilian-born, no notable shinobi lineage, graduated top of her class in ninjutsu. Her picture showed a girl with fiery red hair tied back in a messy ponytail and eyes that burned with an almost defiant intensity. Her academy instructors' notes were a string of superlatives: powerful, aggressive, instinctive, all followed by a single, recurring caveat: lacks discipline. Naruto could practically feel the explosive energy radiating from the small photograph. A cannon without a steady hand to aim it. Yumi Mizushima, from a small but respected clan known for their mastery of water release. Her file was the opposite of Akari's. Top marks in strategy and tactics. Her photograph showed a girl with long, dark blue hair and calm, analytical eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She stood perfectly poised, a stark contrast to Akari's restless energy. The notes praised her intellect, precision, and calm under pressure, but warned of a hesitancy to engage directly, and a tendency to overanalyze. A brilliant blade that was perhaps too cautious to be drawn. Sake Mori. The last file made Naruto pause. The name wasn't from any clan he recognized, but the attached, heavily redacted addendum spoke volumes. The single character for wood was stamped in red at the top. A descendant, then, distant, perhaps, but the blood of the first Hokage ran in her veins. Her photograph showed a girl with soft brown hair and gentle, doe-like eyes that held a hint of uncertainty. She was almost shrinking away from the camera. Her grades were average, except for one area where she was off the charts: chakra control. The instructors' notes were filled with phrases like, immense potential, but also, crippling lack of confidence, and, fearful of her own abilities. A power that terrified its own wielder. Fire, water, and wood. Naruto murmured, closing the folder. An interesting combination. You're not making it easy on me, Kakashi-sensei. The most promising teams are rarely the easiest, Kakashi said, leaning back in his chair. Akari has the power but needs direction. Yumi has the mind but needs a spark. And Sake needs someone who understands what it's like to hold a power you didn't ask for. The unspoken words hung in the air between them. Like you. Naruto's gaze drifted to the window, to the faces of the Hokage carved into the mountain overlooking the village. His own face wasn't there yet, but he knew it was only a matter of time. This, he realized, was part of that path. Not just fighting to protect the village, but building it, shaping the next generation. A flicker of his master Jiraiya, A flash of Kakashi himself, a wave of Iruka Sensei's unwavering belief, it all coalesced into a sense of profound, terrifying responsibility. He gave a slow nod. Team 13, I'll take them. I know you will, Kakashi said, a genuine smile finally reaching his visible eye. They're waiting for you. Academy roof. Try not to be late. It sets a bad example. Naruto just grinned, a flash of the old, mischievous boy peeking through the man. No promises. With a flicker, he was gone, the only sign of his departure a gentle swirl of leaves that settled on the Hokage's desk. The sun beat down on the academy roof, baking the concrete and making the air shimmer. Akari Hino paced back and forth along the edge of the chain-link fence, her footsteps sharp, impatient taps against the ground. He's late, she declared for the 5th time, spinning on her heel to face her 2 teammates. What kind of Jonin leader makes his brand new Genin team wait? I swear, if we get CK with some lazy old fossil who just wants to read books all day, I'm going to file a formal complaint. Yumi Mizushima didn't look up from her vantage point near the edge of the roof. She sat with her legs tucked neatly beneath her posture immaculate, her gaze sweeping over the bustling village below. Pacing won't make him appear faster, Akari, she said, her voice as cool and smooth as river stones. And his reputation suggests he's anything but lazy. It's more probable that this is a test. A way to gauge our patience. Patience is for people who have time to waste, Akari shot back, propping her hands on her hips. I'm ready to start. I'm ready to prove I'm not just some no-name from a civilian family. I want A-rank missions by the end of the year. Sake Mori, who had been kneeling a few feet away, flinched at Akari's loud declaration. She was focused on a tiny, pathetic-looking weed sprouting from a crack in the rooftop's sealant. Its leaves were brown and curled at the edges, clearly struggling in the oppressive heat. With a gentle touch, she channeled a minuscule thread of her chakra into the plant. A soft, green light pulsed from her fingertip, and the tiny weed slowly, miraculously, began to uncurl. Its leaves turned from a sickly brown to a vibrant green. Maybe he's just busy, Sake offered, her voice barely a whisper. She kept her eyes on the revitalized plant, not wanting to get caught in the crossfire between her 2 intense teammates. Being the hero of the village must be a lot of pressure. Akari scoffed, but it lacked its earlier heat. She stopped her pacing and looked at Sake. You're too soft, Sake. This is the shinobi world. It's not about being nice, it's about being strong. If you hesitate, you die. There are different kinds of strength, Yumi countered calmly. Her eyes still on the village. She pointed a slender finger towards the market district. See that merchant? He's cheating the scale. He's been doing it all morning. The Anbu, watching from the opposite roof, has noted it 3 times. Strength isn't always about shouting the loudest. Sometimes it's about seeing what others miss. Before Akari could formulate a response, a new voice cut through the air. Casual and calm, yet carrying an authority that made all 3 of them freeze. She's right. They whipped around, leaning against the doorframe leading onto the roof, as if he'd been there all along. Was Naruto Uzumaki. He wasn't in the Hokage's office anymore. He had appeared without a sound, his presence so natural it was as if he were part of the scenery. But he was impossible to ignore. The stories didn't do him justice. The raw power that radiated from him was a palpable force, a low thrum of energy that made the air itself feel charged. His blonde hair was as bright as the sun, and his blue eyes held a depth that was both startlingly ancient and incredibly present. They weren't just looking at him. They were being seen, assessed, and understood in a single, sweeping glance. Akari's jaw snapped shut. Yumi's analytical gaze widened in a rare show of surprise. Sake instinctively drew her hand back from her little plant, as if caught doing something wrong. Naruto pushed off the doorframe and walked towards them, his movements fluid and economical. He stopped in the center of the roof, his eyes lingering on each of them for a moment. My first impression, he said, his tone even. One is loud and impatient, he began, nodding at Akari, who flushed a deep red. One is distant and maybe a little arrogant, he continued, his gaze shifting to Yumi, who say calm facade finally cracked with a flicker of indignation. And one is more interested in weeds than her own team. Sake looked down at her feet, her cheeks burning with shame. He let the silence hang for a beat. The tension thick enough to taste. The hero of the war wasn't here to congratulate them. He was here to forge them. "We've got a lot of work to do," he said, his voice dropping the casual tone and taking on a hard, serious edge. "Meet me at Training Ground 7 in 1 hour. Don't be late." He turned and walked back to the door, not waiting for a response. As he reached it, he paused and glanced back over his shoulder. "And Sake," he said, his voice a little softer. "The plant looks healthier. Good control." Then he was gone, leaving 3 stunned genin in his wake, the weight of his words and the intensity of his presence settling over them like a physical shroud. Akari was speechless, Yumi was frowning in deep thought, and Sake was staring at the doorway, a single, unexpected compliment echoing in her mind. Training Ground 7 was a place of ghosts and memories for Naruto. It was where he had first become a part of a team, where he had learned the bitter taste of failure and the sweet victory of camaraderie. The 3 posts, scarred and beaten from generations of use, stood as silent witnesses. He was leaning against one of them when his new team arrived, exactly 1 hour later, not a second to spare. They were breathless, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and fierce determination. He held up his left hand, and with a small jingle, 2 small silver bells appeared, tied to a red string. They glinted in the afternoon sun. "Your test is simple," Naruto announced, his voice carrying across the clearing. "You have until sunset to get these bells from me." He tied the string to the belt on his pants, where the bells hung tantalizingly. "If you can't get a bell, you fail. And you'll be sent back to the academy. No questions, no appeals." Akari's eyes narrowed, a predator's focus locking onto the target. Yumi was already scanning the environment. The trees, the river, the position of the sun. Sake just stared at the bells, her hands clenched nervously at her sides. "There are only 2 bells. Sensei," Yumi pointed out, her voice sharp and clear. "There are 3 of us." "That's right," Naruto said, a humorless smile touching his lips. "Which means at least one of you is guaranteed to fail. Perhaps you should have thought about that before deciding to become a ninja." He let the implication sink in, a poison designed to fracture them, to turn them against one another. He had to see what they were made of. He had to see if they would break. "One last thing," he added, his blue eyes hardening into chips of ice. "Come at me with the intent to kill. If you don't, you won't even have a chance to touch these bells." He placed his hand on a kunai pouch, and the air crackled. This wasn't a game. This wasn't an academic exercise. The legendary hero vanished, replaced by a shinobi whose killing intent washed over them like a physical wave. It was suffocating, a pressure that stole the air from their lungs and made their survival instincts scream. "The test," he said, his voice a low growl, "starts now." And then he vanished. For a moment, there was only the sound of the wind in the leaves and their own ragged breathing. "Where did he go?" Sake whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Spread out," Yumi commanded, her mind already kicking into gear despite the oppressive pressure. "He'll try to pick us off one by one. Akari, don't just charge in." Sake, try to get a feel for his chakra signature. But it was too late. Akari, fueled by a mixture of excitement and defiance, had already exploded into action. "Like I'm going to let him get the drop on us. Fire style. Phoenix flower jutsu." She inhaled deeply and spewed a volley of small fireballs, each one guided with surprising accuracy towards the trees where she sensed a flicker of movement. The fireballs impacted with explosive force, scorching bark and sending plumes of smoke into the air. Akari grinned, a wild, triumphant look in her eyes. A hand clamped down on her shoulder from behind. "Too much anger," a calm voice said in her ear. "Not enough focus." Akari's eyes widened in horror. Before she could even think to move, Naruto spun her around and sent her flying with a preck. Easily aimed kick to the stomach that knocked the wind out of her but was carefully controlled to cause no real damage. She crashed into the river with a huge splash, sputtering and gasping for air. "Your fire burns bright, but it has no direction," Naruto said, standing on the riverbank as if he'd been there the whole time. He didn't even look at her as he turned his attention towards the woods. One down. From the trees, a dozen shuriken flew towards him, each one aimed at a vital point. At the same time, the ground beneath his feet turned to thick, clinging mud. A classic combination attack, Smart. Naruto didn't move. He let the shuriken get within an inch of his face before they were all snatched out of the air by a hand made of pure, golden chakra. The chakra arm, massive and blazing with power, emerged from his back and flexed its fingers before dissolving. He took a single, effortless step out of the mud pit. Good plan, he called out, his voice echoing slightly. But you awesome. I'd react to the obvious threat first. You need to predict, not just plan. Yumi gritted her teeth from her hiding place. He was toying with them. He wasn't even taking them seriously. From another location, she flashed a series of hand signs. Water style. Water clone jutsu. 3 perfect copies of herself emerged from the river and charged at Naruto. At the same time, she began weaving signs for a much larger technique. This was the real attack. The clones were just a distraction. Naruto dealt with the clones without moving his feet. He dispatched the first with a simple, disabling chop to the neck. The second was dispelled by a flick of his finger that sent a compressed pellet of wind into its chest. The third he simply allowed to run past him, before he casually tripped it, sending T face first into the mud where it dissolved. Still too predictable, he said, his eyes locking directly onto Yumi's hiding spot behind a large oak tree. She froze, her intricate hand signs half-formed. He hadn't just defeated her clones. He had seen through her entire strategy from the beginning. Suddenly, the ground around Naruto erupted. Small, tough roots snaked up from the earth, attempting to ensnare his ankles. It wasn't a powerful attack, but it was perfectly timed, designed to hold him in place for Yumi's real jutsu. Naruto glanced down at the writhing roots. Sake. He could feel her chakra, trembling and hesitant. But there, he didn't break the roots. He simply let them wrap around his boots, a silent invitation. I can feel your hesitation, Sake, he said, his voice carrying to her hiding place. He hadn't moved, hadn't even looked in her direction, yet he knew exactly where she was. This power of yours, you inherited it. It's a part of you. Don't be afraid of it. Unleash it. His words struck a chord deep within her. Fear was a constant companion. Fear of her power, fear of losing control, fear of hurting someone. But his voice, it held no judgment. Only a challenge. A demand that she be more than what she feared she was. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Sake pushed more chakra into the ground. The roots thickened, growing thorns, wrapping tighter around Naruto's legs. At the same time, Yumi completed her jutsu. Water style. Water dragon jutsu. A massive dragon made of churning water rose from the river, its roar a torrent of sound, and crashed down towards the rooted Naruto. Simultaneously, Akari, having clambered out of the river, her hair dripping and her eyes blazing with renewed fury, launched herself through the air. Take this, she screamed, her fist wreathed in flames. It was a perfect 3-pronged attack. He was trapped, a massive jutsu was bearing down on him, and a close-range specialist was attacking his blind spot. By all rights, it should have worked. Naruto just sighed. Still not enough. He stomped his foot once. A wave of pure chakra, so dense it was almost visible, erupted from his body. Saki's roots were obliterated into splinters. Yumi's water dragon was blasted apart into a harmless spray of mist that rained down over the training ground. Akari, still in midair, was blown backward by the concussive force, landing in a heap at the base of a tree. The clearing fell silent again, save for the dripping of water from the leaves. The 3 girls were scattered, defeated, and demoralized. Naruto hadn't even moved from his spot. The bells on his hip hadn't so much as twitched. He walked slowly to the center of the field, his expression unreadable. Is that it? Is that all you have? 3 separate attacks. 3 failures. Are you even a team? Akari pushed herself to her feet, her body bruised but her spirit unbroken. Shut up. We can do this. No, you can't, Naruto corrected her, his voice sharp. Akari, you attack without thinking. Yumi, you think without committing. Sake, you're so afraid of your own shadow you can barely fight at all. None of you can get these bells alone. The test isn't about your individual skills. I read your files. I already know what you can do. This test is about whether or not you can be more than the sum of your parts. He raised his right hand, and a swirling, crackling ball of blue chakra began to form in his palm. It grew larger and larger, It sounded a terrifying shriek that seemed to tear at the very fabric of the air. A Rasengan. But it wasn't the one he used against enemies. This one was huge, a miniature son of pure, unrestrained power. This is the level you're up against, he said, his voice calm amidst the jutsu's roar. You can keep coming at me one by one, and I will keep knocking you down. Or, you can figure it out. He held the massive Rasengan aloft. He wasn't aiming it at them. It was a demonstration, a statement. The sheer power rolling off it was suffocating. It was a vision of the gap that lay between them. The girls instinctively scrambled together, huddling near the memorial stone, the raw power of the Rasengan creating a wind that whipped their hair and clothes. They looked at each other, panting, beaten. In Akari's eyes, the fire was banked but not extinguished. In Saki's, fear was warring with a tiny, flickering spark of resolve. It was Yumi who spoke first. Her voice low and urgent. He's right. We can't beat him. Not like this. So what? Akari spat. We just give up. No, Yumi said, her analytical gaze sharpening. She looked from Akari's clenched, fiery fists to Saki's trembling hands. We stop thinking like three individuals trying to pass a test. We start thinking like a team trying to complete a mission. Her eyes met Akari's. Your fire. He said it has no direction. So let's give it one. I have a plan. Naruto let the Rasengan dissipate, the sudden silence deafening. He watched them, his arms crossed. They were talking, whispering, arguing, planning. A faint smile touched his lips. Finally, a minute later, they broke their huddle. They didn't look confident. They looked terrified. But they stood together, a united front. Ready, Sensei. Akari called out, her voice still defiant, but this time, it was laced with something else. It was part of a larger chorus. Naruto just nodded. Show me. It started, as he expected, with Akari. She charged. But this time it was different. There was no wild screaming, no unfocused rage. Her movements were precise, her fiery punches aimed not at him, but around him, forcing him to move in specific directions. Hurting him. It was a distraction, yes, but a smart one. A feint. While he was occupied with Akari's relentless assault, Yumi was at the river, weaving a complex series of hand signs. Mist servant technique. A thick, dense fog rolled out from the river, quickly enveloping the entire training ground. Visibility dropped to near zero. Naruto's normal senses were useless. But he could still feel their chakra. Akari was still pressing her attack, her fiery fists glowing like beacons in the mist. Yumi was holding her position by the river. And Saki's chakra was spreading out, not in one place, but everywhere, sinking into the ground, becoming one with the earth and the trees. Naruto easily dodged another of Akari's punches, but he allowed her to force him back another step. Right into the spot they wanted him. He could feel it, a trap. Now, Yumi's unspoken command pulsed through the air. The ground beneath Naruto's feet didn't erupt with violent roots. Instead, the very grass beneath his boots seemed to come alive, weaving together at an impossible speed, becoming as strong as steel wire, wrapping around his ankles and holding him fast. It was Saki's work, subtle and brilliant. Not an attack, but a perfect snare. At the exact same moment, the mist in front of him swirled, and a dozen water needles, impossibly sharp, shot towards his face. Yumi's precision attack, designed to make him look up, to draw his attention. It was a good plan. A great plan, for Genin. But he was Naruto Uzumaki. He was about to simply power through the snare when he felt it. A tiny, almost imperceptible tug at his belt. It wasn't forceful, it was gentle, insistent. He looked down. A single, thin, green vine had snaked its way up his pants, completely hidden by their feints and distractions. It wasn't trying to hold him or attack him. It had gently, delicately, wrapped itself around the red string holding the bells. And with a final, decisive pull, the vine snapped the string. The two bells fell silently to the ground at his feet. The mist cleared. The grass snare loosened. Akari stood a few feet away, breathing heavily, a look of shocked disbelief on her face. Yumi was by the river, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. And Sake was kneeling by a tree, her hand pressed to the trunk, looking at the bells on the ground as if she couldn't believe what she had done. The sun was beginning to touch the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Silence. Naruto looked down at the bells, then back up at the three exhausted, hopeful faces looking at him. A wide, genuine smile spread across his face, lighting up his features and chasing away the last vestiges of the terrifying Genin. "You pass," he said. A collective sigh of relief went through them, so profound that they all sagged. Akari actually fell to her knees, all her fight gone, replaced by giddy exhaustion. Naruto walked over and picked up the bells. He went to Sake first, kneeling in front of her. "You found a way to win without a fight," he said, his voice soft, holding her gaze until she finally looked up at him. "That's a strength few shinobi ever learn. Don't ever be afraid of that." He then walked to Yumi, who stood up a little straighter. "You saw the whole board, not just your own pieces. You used your teammates' strengths to cover your own weaknesses. That's what a leader does." Finally, he stood before Akari. She looked up at him from the ground, her defiance replaced with a grudging respect. "And you," he said, offering a hand to help her up. "You trusted your team. Your fire became a tool to achieve an objective, not just a weapon to throw at a problem. That's discipline." She took his hand, her own calloused one feeling small in his grasp. He pulled her effortlessly to her feet. "Tomorrow, we're a real team. Tomorrow, we get our first mission," he announced to all of them. He looked out towards the setting sun, a flicker of memory in his eyes. "Pack for a week. We're heading to the land of waves." He dismissed them then, telling them to go eat and rest. As they walked away, bruised, exhausted, and ecstatic, their conversation drifted back to him. They weren't three individuals anymore. They were chattering, laughing, already recounting their battle, praising each other's moves. They were a team. Naruto watched them go, a feeling of deep satisfaction settling in his chest. This was right. This was good. He was a sensei. Miles away, in a room lit only by the flickering flame of a single candle, a figure knelt before a man sitting in the shadows. The kneeling man wore the blank, emotionless mask of a root Anbu, but his uniform was jet black, bearing no insignia of Konoha. "The new Genin teams have been finalized, Lord Kageyama," the masked shinobi reported, his voice a monotone whisper. "The Jinchuriki, Uzumaki, has been assigned as a Jonin leader." The man in the shadows, Kageyama, shifted, the candlelight gling off the porcelain of his own unadorned Anbu mask. A folder lay open on the low table before him. "Uzumaki is a symbol," Kageyama said, his voice a low, cold rasp. "He represents the very bonds his world foolishly clings to: friendship, loyalty, trust. Such things are weaknesses, chains that bind the strong to the weak. His team has been chosen," the subordinate continued. "A civilian with high potential in fire release. A clan shinobi with tactical acumen. And the vessel." Kageyama's unseen gaze settled on the third picture in the file, the picture of the girl with gentle eyes. Sake Mori. His finger, clad in a black glove, traced her name. "The first's bloodline," he murmured, the words curling with a mixture of contempt and avarice. "A bond to the very life of this world. The ultimate chain. Such bonds are liabilities. They exist only to be broken." He looked up, his masked face a void in the darkness. "Watch them," he commanded. "Watch them all. The boy is a key, and the girl is a door. And I will use them both to shatter the chains of this world forever." Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Echoes in the Mist. The road out of Konoha was a familiar friend, a ribbon of well-trodden earth that wound its way through lush forests and past sun-drenched fields. For Naruto, every step was a conversation with his own past. He remembered running this same path as a boy, full of a desperate, clawing need to be seen. To prove he was more than the monster sealed inside him. Now, he walked it as a sensei, the quiet footfalls of his three students behind him a steady, rhythmic reminder of a different kind of responsibility. Akari, true to form, was practically vibrating with energy. She walked with a bounce in her step, her head on a constant swivel, taking in every rustle of the leaves, every chirp of a bird. As if a mortal enemy might leap out from behind any tree. She had 1,000 questions, peppering Naruto with queries about famous battles, legendary jutsu, and the highest-ranked mission he'd ever been on. It was a relentless barrage of hero worship and competitive drive, and Naruto answered each question with an amused patience that seemed to only encourage her. Yumi, by contrast, moved with a silent, deliberate grace. Her steps were economical, her eyes missing nothing. She wasn't looking for enemies. She was mapping the terrain, noting vantage points, sources of water, the direction of the wind. Her questions, when they came, were quiet and directed only to Naruto, spoken in a low tone when Akari was momentarily distracted by a peculiar-looking beetle. They were questions of strategy. Why take this path instead of the more direct route through the valley? What were the political implications of a Konoha team operating so close to the border of the Land of Sound? Each query was a glimpse into a mind that saw the world as a complex board of shogi, every piece and every move interconnected. Sake was a quiet presence between them, her steps so light. They barely seemed to disturb the dust on the road. Her attention wasn't on the path ahead or the strategic landscape, but on the life that teemed all around them. She would occasionally pause to touch the bark of an ancient tree. A faint smile on her lips, as if listening to a secret. Naruto noticed that when she walked, the birds seemed to sing a little louder, the squirrels seemed a little bolder. The world itself seemed to welcome her. Since their test, a sliver of her deep-seated fear had been replaced by a fragile, budding confidence. She still spoke in a near whisper, but she no longer flinched when Naruto looked her way. Instead, a faint blush would dust her cheeks, and she would meet his gaze for a fleeting second before looking away. Their client, the bridge builder Tazuna, walked just ahead of Naruto. He was a wiry old man with a towel wrapped around his head and a cynical glint in his eyes. He smelled faintly of sake and sawdust and complained with the practiced ease of a man who had made it an art form. The road was too long, the sun was too hot, the ninja were too young. Are you sure they're even ninja? Tazuna grumbled, casting a skeptical eye over his shoulder at the three girls. They look like they should be playing with dolls, not guarding my life. Especially that loud one. She'll scare off the fish. They're stronger than they look, Naruto said calmly, his eyes not leaving the path ahead. You're in good hands. HMPH. I'll believe it when I see it, Tazuna muttered. Don't worry, old man, Akari piped up, having overheard. If anyone tries to mess with you, I'll turn them into a pile of ash before they can even blink. She punctuated her statement by punching a fist into her palm, creating a small, sharp crack of sound. Tazuna just shook his head and grumbled something about reckless youths. The first few days of the journey were uneventful, lulling them into the easy rhythm of a C-rank mission. They camped at night under the stars, taking turns on watch. During his watch with Akari, she tried to challenge him to a sparring match. He declined with a smile, and instead spent the hour teaching her a chakra control exercise, to focus her fire into a small, steady flame on the tip of her finger that could burn through a leaf without setting the rest of it alight. It was infuriatingly difficult for her, and her admiration for him grew with every failed attempt as he demonstrated it perfectly, his flame a tiny, unwavering star in the darkness. During his watch with Yumi, she didn't speak for a long time, simply observing the night. Then, she quietly pointed out 3 separate flaws in their campsite's defensive perimeter, explaining with chilling precision how a skilled assassin could exploit each one. Naruto listened intently. N pointed out a 4th flaw she had missed. A flicker of deep respect entered her eyes, and they spent the rest of the watch in a comfortable silence, 2 strategists appreciating the quiet complexities of the night. His watch with Sake was different. She didn't ask questions or point out flaws. She showed him things. She pointed to a patch of moss and explained how it could be used to create a poultice that drew out poison. She led him to a cluster of flowers that only bloomed in the moonlight and whose petals, when crushed, created a powerful soporific. She seemed to have an innate, encyclopedic knowledge of the natural world. He found himself asking her questions, genuinely curious. With each answer she gave, she seemed to stand a little taller, her voice growing a little stronger. He saw the potential Kakashi had spoken of, not just a power to be controlled, but a deep, fundamental connection to the world that was beautiful and rare. They reached the coast on the 4th day and hired a small, flat-bottomed boat to take them across the channel to the land of waves. A thick, oppressive mist rolled over the water, clinging to everything and muffling all sound. It was an unnatural fog, heavy with the taste of salt and something else, something old and sad. This mist is strange, Yumi murmured, her hand resting on the hilt of a kunai. It's too dense. It feels like it's infused with chakra. Naruto nodded, his eyes scanning the gray nothingness that surrounded them. He could feel it too. A subtle, unpleasant hum in the air. Stay sharp. The boatman, a nervous man who kept his head down, pulled them through the eerie silence. The only sound was the gentle lapping of water against the hull. Akari's usual boisterous energy was gone, replaced by a tense, coiled readiness. Sake had her eyes closed, her hands resting lightly on the wooden planks of the boat, her brows furrowed in concentration. Suddenly, Saki's eyes snapped open. Two of them, she whispered, her voice tight with alarm. Under the water, coming fast. Before she had even finished her sentence, two figures burst from the murky depths. They were clad in the distinctive garb of Kurigakure ninja, complete with rebreathers and wicked-looking chain gauntlets. They moved with a fluid, predatory grace, landing silently on the water's surface as if it were solid ground. Well, one of them hissed, his voice distorted by his mask. Looks like the old bridge builder hired himself some proper bodyguards. A shame they're just children. The boatman cried out in terror and dove into the water, swimming frantically for the shore. Tazuna fell back, his face pale with shock. Who are you? We're just here to deliver a message from Mr. Gato, the second ninja said with a sneer. He's not happy about you trying to finish that bridge. Naruto stepped in front of Tazuna, placing himself between the bridge builder and the enemy. His students fanned out beside him, falling into a defensive formation almost by instinct. Akari's hands were already a blur of signs. Yumi had 3 kunai gripped between her fingers, and Saki's hands were pressed together, her chakra flowing into the water around the boat. Kiri ninja, Naruto said, his voice dangerously calm. You're a long way from home. I suggest you turn around and go back before you get hurt. The two ninja laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Big words from a pretty boy sensei. We are the demon brothers. Maizu and Gozu. Your lives are forfeit. In a flash, they attacked. One of them shot forward, the chain from his gauntlet uncoiling like a striking serpent. It wrapped around Naruto in an instant, the sharp claws at the end digging into his flak jacket. The other brother shot off in the opposite direction, the chain pulling taut between them. Now you're trapped, Gozu cackled. One move, and my brother will tear you to pieces. He kicked off the water, flying towards the terrified Tazuna, his own claws extended. Akari reacted on pure instinct. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. She spewed a massive ball of flame at the charging ninja, but he simply dodged it with contemptuous ease, the fireball hissing as it plunged into the sea. Too slow, little girl. He sneered, but it wasn't about hitting him. As Gozu dodged, he moved directly into the path Yumi had predicted. Now, Yumi yelled, and 3 kunai, each tied with a nearly invisible wire, flew from her hands. They didn't target the ninja himself, but the water around his feet. The moment they hit, she channeled her chakra. Water style. Binding water prison. The water beneath Gozu's feet erupted, forming a swirling vortex that trapped his legs, holding him fast. He snarled in frustration, caught completely by surprise. At the same time, the Naruto caught in the chain dissolved into a cloud of smoke. A substitution. Looking for me. The real Naruto appeared behind Maizu, the ninja holding the other end of the chain. He delivered a swift, brutal chop to the back of the man's neck. Maizu's eyes rolled up in their sockets, and he collapsed, unconscious. Gozu roared in anger, struggling against Yumi's water trap. You'll pay for that. Your partner is down, Naruto said, appearing on the boat again as if he had never left it. Your mission is over. Before Gozu could respond, a thick, wooden vine erupted from the water, wrapped around his torso, and squeezed. The air rushed out of his lungs in a pained grunt, and Sake, her face set with grim determination, held him fast. The fight had lasted less than 30 seconds. Naruto looked at his team. Akari was breathing hard, a frustrated look on her face from her missed attack. Yumi's expression was one of calm satisfaction. Sake looked a little shaken, but resolute. Good work, Naruto said, and the simple praise was enough to make all 3 of them stand a little straighter. He turned his attention to the bound Gozu. Now, let's talk about Gato. The captured ninja just spat a mouthful of water at Naruto's feet. I'll tell you nothing. Konoha scum. Naruto's expression didn't change. He simply reached down, his fingers glowing with a faint blue chakra, and placed 2 fingers on the ninja's forehead. Gozu's eyes went wide, and then he screamed, a short, sharp cry of mental agony before he, too, slumped into unconsciousness. Naruto stood up, his face grim. It's as I thought. This is more than a C-rank mission. Gato, a shipping magnate, has hired Ninja to maintain his control over this island. Your bridge is a threat to his monopoly. He's hired Missing Nin to kill you, Tazuna. Tazuna, who had been hiding behind the boat's small cabin, collapsed onto the deck, his face a mask of despair. It's true, he confessed, his voice trembling. My country is poor, we couldn't afford an A- rank mission. I had to lie, I didn't think he would hire ninja of this caliber. You put my students in danger, Naruto said, his voice dropping to a low, cold tone that made the old man flinch. There was a moment of heavy silence. Akari, Yumi, and Sake looked at their sensei, waiting. This was his decision. Naruto looked at his team, at their determined, trusting faces. He had seen fear in their eyes, but he had also seen courage. They hadn't broken. They had stood together. Then he looked at the misty shoreline of the Land of Waves, a country held hostage by greed. This was what it meant to be a ninja of Konoha. To protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The mission continues, Naruto declared, his voice ringing with unshakable resolve. We will escort you to your home, Tazuna, and we will protect you while you finish your bridge. A wave of relief and pride washed over the 3 genin. This was their sensei, a man who didn't back down from a fight, who stood for what was right, no matter the cost. Akari grinned, her frustration forgotten. All right, now we're talking. A real mission. Yumi gave a small, almost imperceptible nod of approval. Sake just watched Naruto, a warmth SP, reading through her chest that had nothing to do with the sun. Tazuna's home was a small, humble house on the outskirts of the main village. They were greeted by his daughter, Tsunami, a kind woman with worried eyes, and his grandson, Inari, a small, sullen boy who looked at them with open hostility. They're just going to die, Inari said from the doorway, glaring at the ninja. Gato's men are monsters. No one can beat them. You shouldn't have come here. He turned and ran into the house before anyone could respond. I'm sorry, Tsunami said, bowing her head. This island has lost all hope. Since Kaiza, she trailed off, her voice thick with unshed tears. Later that evening, after a tense dinner, Naruto found Inari sitting alone on the edge of the dock, staring out at the half-finished bridge that loomed like a skeleton in the twilight. Naruto sat down beside him, the wood creaking under his weight. Your grandfather is a brave man, Naruto said quietly. He's a fool, Inari shot back without looking at him. He's going to get himself killed. And for what? That stupid bridge. A bridge connects things, Naruto said, his gaze on the distant structure. It connects people, gives them a chance for a better future. That's not stupid. That's hope. There's no such thing as heroes, the boy muttered, pulling his knees to his chest. Not anymore. The conversation was a ghost of another, long ago. Naruto saw a flash of himself in this bitter, heartbroken child. He knew this despair. He had lived it. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just sat with the boy in silence, sharing the weight of his grief. A silent act of understanding that was more powerful than any words could be. From the window of the house, Akari, Yumi, and Sake watched them. They saw not the legendary warrior, but a man with a boundless capacity for empathy, a man who could feel the pain of a small, lost boy. And in their own ways, each of them fell for him a little more. The next day, Naruto took his team out for training. Tazuna is going to the bridge with a few of the villagers. We'll escort him, but our priority is to prepare for the next attack. It will come, and it will be stronger than the last one. He led them to a clearing in the woods. We're going to work on climbing trees. Akari scoffed. Climbing trees. Sensei, we learned how to do that at the academy. Not like this, Naruto said. He walked to the base of a massive, ancient tree that rose 100 feet into the air and, without using his hands, simply walked straight up the trunk, his feet adhering to the bark as if he were walking on flat ground. He stopped halfway up, turned, and looked down at their astonished faces. Using chakra. The goal is perfect control. Too little, and you'll fall. Too much, and you'll blast the tree apart and be thrown off. It's a foundational skill for everything else we'll do. He tossed 3 kunai down to them. Use these to mark your progress. Now, begin. What followed was a humbling, frustrating, and ultimately illuminating experience. Akari, with her poor chakra control, kept blasting herself off the trunk, leaving scorched craters in the bark. She grew more and more furious with each failure, her competitive nature driving her into a rage. Yumi was methodical. She analyzed the problem, calculated the precise amount of chakra needed, and made slow, steady progress. But her analytical approach was her weakness. She thought too much, adjusted too often, and couldn't find the fluid, intuitive rhythm needed to ascend. Sake, to everyone's surprise, was a natural. Her innate, perfect control allowed her to walk up the tree on her first try as easily as Naruto had. She reached the very top, then looked down, a look of genuine shock on her face, as if she couldn't believe she had done it. Naruto smiled up at her. See, it's not about power, it's about balance. He spent the rest of the day coaching Akari and Yumi. For Akari, he didn't just tell her to be calm. He showed her how her rage was a tool. You feel that fire, he said to her after she had crashed to the ground for the 10th time. Don't fight it, don't suppress it, focus it, channel all of that frustration, all of that power, into a single point under your feet. Let it burn, but make it burn for you. His words clicked something into place for her. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and when she opened them, the wild inferno was a focused, blue-white flame. She placed her foot on the tree, and this time, it stuck. For Yumi, he took the opposite approach. Stop thinking, he told her as he meticulously calculated her next step. Your mind is your greatest weapon, but right now, it's a cage. Feel the chakra, feel the tree, trust your instincts, Yumi. You're a ninja, not a scholar. He then engaged her in a rapid-fire sparring match right there at the base of the tree, forcing her to dodge and block on pure reflex. In the middle of the exchange, he kicked her feet out from under her, and in a desperate, instinctive move to avoid falling, she pushed a burst of chakra to her feet and found herself standing on the trunk. Her eyes widened in revelation. By sunset, all 3 of them could stand comfortably on the side of the tree. They were exhausted, covered in scrapes and bruises, but they were triumphant. They had each overcome a fundamental weakness, not because he had given them the answer, but because he had shown them how to find it within themselves. They were walking back to Tezuna's house when they felt it. A sudden, bone-deep chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. The birds fell silent, the cheerful chirping of crickets ceased, and a mist, thicker and colder than any natural fog, rolled in from the sea, blanketing the forest in a shroud of gray. He's here, Naruto said, his body instantly shifting from relaxed sensei to battle-ready warrior. He pushed Tezuna behind him. Team 13, Formation Delta. The girls moved without hesitation, forming a protective triangle around the bridge builder, their training from the past few days kicking in. A figure emerged from the mist, tall and slender, his face covered in bandages, revealing only a single, cold eye. He wore the standard Kurigakure flak jacket but carried a weapon that was anything but standard. It was a massive executioner's blade, a zanbato, resting on his shoulder as if it weighed nothing. Zabuza Momochi, Naruto said, his voice low, the demon of the hidden mist. I should have known Gato would hire the best. Zabuza let out a low, humorless chuckle. So, you know of me. Then you know that your mission is over. Hand over the old man, and I'll let the children live. His gaze swept over Akari, Yumi, and Sake with dismissive contempt. Not going to happen, Naruto replied, his hand already reaching for a kunai. A pity, Zabuza said. He lifted a single hand. Ninjutsu. Hidden mist technique. The mist exploded outwards, becoming so dense it was like being plunged underwater. Visibility dropped to absolute zero. They couldn't see their own hands in front of their faces. Panic began to set in. Don't worry, Naruto's voice cut through the fog, calm and reassuring, a lighthouse in the storm. He's a master of silent killing. He'll try to use the mist to pick us off. Sake, find him. Yumi, Akari, guard Tizuna. Do not move from your position unless I give the order. Sake closed her eyes, pushing her senses out, not with her eyes or ears, but with her chakra, feeling the life in the forest around them. It was difficult. The mist was thick with Zabuza's own powerful, malevolent chakra, making it hard to distinguish anything. His chakra is everywhere, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. I can't pinpoint him. A cold, menacing voice seemed to come from all directions at once. 8 points. Zabuza's voice whispered through the mist. Larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, heart. Which vital point would you like me to hit? The killing intent was a physical thing, a crushing weight that made it hard to breathe. Akari let out a small, involuntary gasp of fear. Yumi's hands were slick with sweat. This was a different level entirely. The demon brothers were thugs. This was a true monster. Then, Naruto laughed, a short, sharp bark of sound that cut through the tension. You think a little parlor trick like that is going to scare me? Naruto's voice boomed, full of a confidence that seemed to push back the mist itself. Let me tell you something, Zabuza. I've faced down gods. I've stared into the abyss and made it blink. Your killing intent is nothing more than a child's tantrum compared to what I've seen. He flared his own chakra. It wasn't the gentle, controlled warmth he used for training. This was a raw, untamed inferno. It was the power of the nine-tailed fox, a tsunami of golden energy that erupted from him, burning away the mist in a perfect circle around Team 13. The oppressive killing intent vanished, utterly overwhelmed. Zabuza materialized a few dozen feet away, his single eye wide with genuine shock. That chakra, who are you? Naruto grinned, a feral, dangerous expression that held no humor. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and I'm the sensei of the team that's going to take you down. As he spoke, he felt it again. That same faint, unsettling resonance he'd felt during the fight with the demon brothers. It was clinging to Zabuza's chakra, a subtle, discordant note. It was a thread of darkness, of pure, nihilistic hatred, that felt ancient and wrong. It was amplifying Zabuza's already potent killing intent, twisting it into something even colder, more absolute. It was the faint, chilling echo of the Oni of Silence, and its presence here was no coincidence. Zabuza, recovering from his shock, just sneered. Big words. Let's see if you can back them up. He shot forward, his massive blade whistling through the air, aimed directly at Tizuna. Naruto moved to intercept, a Rasengan already forming in his hand. But he stopped. This wasn't just his fight. Team, now, he commanded. Yumi was the first to act. She slammed her hands on the ground. Earth style. Mud wall. A thick, sturdy wall of earth erupted from the ground, blocking Zabuza's path. The massive blade cleaved through it, but it slowed his charge for a precious second. In that second, Akari attacked. No you don't, she screamed, her hands weaving signs at an incredible speed. Fire style. Great dragon fire technique. A massive dragon's head made of searing flame erupted from her mouth, far larger and more powerful than any fireball she had created before. She had taken his lesson to heart, channeling all her focus, all her spirit, into this one attack. Zabuza was forced to leap back, his eyes widening slightly at the shish. Ear power of the technique coming from a genin. But the attack wasn't meant to hit him. As he landed, the ground beneath his feet turned soft and yielding. Sake had channeled her chakra, not to create roots, but to infuse the very earth with the life-giving properties of water and wood, turning it into a sucking mire. Zabuza was trapped, his feet sinking into the mud. He was only held for a moment, but a moment was all Naruto needed. He appeared directly in front of the trapped Zabuza, no Rasengan in his hand, just a simple kunai. He moved with a speed that Zabuza couldn't even track, and the fight was over before it began. A flick of Naruto's wrist, and Zabuza's rebreather was sliced off. Another, and the tendons in both of his arms were expertly severed. The massive executioner's blade fell from his nerveless grasp and buried itself in the mud. A final, precise jab, and Naruto struck a pressure point on Zabuza's neck, dropping the legendary swordsman to his knees, paralyzed and defeated. The mist receded. The silence of the forest returned. Team 13 stood panting, staring at the kneeling, helpless form of the demon of the hidden mist. They had done it. They had faced one of the most infamous ninja in the world. And with their sensei's guidance, they had won. Naruto stood over Zabuza, his expression grim. It's over. Suddenly, two Senbon needles flew from the trees and embedded themselves in Zabuza's neck. He stiffened, then collapsed, apparently dead. A new figure appeared on a tree branch above them. It was a hunter nin from Kurigakure, their face hidden by a white mask with a swirling design. "Thank you for your assistance," the hunter nin said, their voice young and melodic, almost feminine. "I have been tracking Zabuza for some time. I will dispose of the body." Before Naruto could say a word, the hunter nin flickered down, picked up Zabuza's body, and vanished back into the trees. Akari cheered. "We did it. We really did it." Yumi leaned against a tree, a small, tired smile on her face. Sake was looking at her own hands, a look of wonder in her eyes. But Naruto was frowning, his gaze fixed on the spot where the hunter nin had disappeared. Something was wrong. The Senbon needles, the location they had struck. Hunter nin were supposed to destroy the body on sight to prevent village secrets from being stolen. And those needles hadn't been aimed at a vital point. They were meant to induce a death-like state. Zabuza wasn't dead, and that hunter nin was his accomplice. He looked at his exhausted, triumphant team. They had done well. They had grown more in the past 2 days than they had in their entire time at the academy. But this fight was far from over. "Let's get Tazuna home," he said, his voice betraying none of his suspicion. "You all earned a good night's rest." As they walked back, the image of his team working together, their individual skills weaving into a single, cohesive strategy, replayed in his mind. Akari's explosive power, given direction by Yumi's brilliant mind, enabled by Saki's subtle, life-affirming control. Fire, water, and wood. Kakashi had been right. It was a dangerous combination. And in his hands, he knew, it could become something legendary. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. The Whispers of a Fractured Bond. The gates of Konoha rose before them, not just as a physical entrance, but as a symbol of homecoming. The weak eye, and the land of waves felt like a lifetime. They had left as fresh-faced genin, uncertain and untested. They returned as a team forged in the chilling mist of real combat, their innocence left behind with the ghost of Zabuza Momochi. The guards at the gate, seasoned Chunin who had likely seen the girls' academy photos just weeks ago, now looked at them with a newfound respect, their gazes lingering on Naruto with a shared understanding of the burdens a sensei carries. Word of their success in a mission that had escalated far beyond its rank had preceded them. As they walked through the familiar streets, Naruto noticed the change. The villagers still smiled and waved at him, their beloved hero, but now their gazes also fell upon Akari, Yumi, and Sake with curiosity and admiration. Akari puffed out her chest, soaking in the attention with a proud grin. Yumi accepted it with a cool, dignified nod, though Naruto could see a flicker of pride in her eyes. Sake, however, seemed to shrink under the scrutiny, pulling her sleeves over her hands and walking a little closer to Naruto, as if his presence were a shield. Their report to the Hokage was concise. Naruto detailed the deception of the client, the encounter with the demon brothers, and the subsequent battle with Zabuza Momochi. He deliberately omitted his suspicions about Zabuza's death, filing it away as a problem for another time. For now, he wanted his team to savor their victory. Kakashi listened from behind his desk, his single visible eye conveying a universe of meaning. When Naruto finished, the Hokage leaned back, the leather of his chair groaning softly. "You exceeded expectations, Team 13, Kakashi said, his gaze sweeping over the three girls. "You faced an A-rank threat and not only survived, but triumphed. This will be noted in your permanent records." He then looked directly at Naruto, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "It seems I chose the right sensei." The praise from the Hokage was a potent thing. Akari looked like she might burst. Yumi's composure was flawless, but her hands were clenched into tight fists of contained excitement at her sides. Saki's cheeks were flushed with a rosy pink. "Don't let it go to your heads," Naruto said, his voice cutting through their elation, though his own pride was evident in his tone. "We were successful because we worked as a team. The moment you forget that is the moment you fail. Dismissed. Go home. Rest. You've earned it." As the girls bowed and left the office, their excited chatter echoing back down the hall, Kakashi gestured for Naruto to stay. "They did well. Kakashi said once they were alone. They did, Naruto agreed, his casual posture returning as he leaned against the wall. They have the potential to be one of the best. Which is why I have another mission for you, Kakashi said, his tone shifting from that of a proud leader to a weary statesman. He slid a new, thicker file across the desk. This one requires a different kind of strength. Not jutsu or taijutsu, but patience and perception. Naruto picked up the folder. The cover was stamped with the insignia of the diplomatic corps. A security detail, of the most delicate kind, Kakashi confirmed. Lord Shinmoku of Iwagakure is arriving tomorrow. He's the head of their elder council, a staunch traditionalist who still thinks of Konoha as the enemy his generation fought. He's here to finalize the new resource-sharing treaty. It's vital to the long-term peace between our villages, but Shinmoku is looking for any excuse to scuttle the deal. Your team will be assigned as his personal guard during his stay. Naruto frowned, flipping through the file. It was filled with diplomatic protocols, cultural taboos of Iowa, and a psychological profile of a stubborn, paranoid old man. This seems like a job for the Anbu, not a Genin team. The Anbu are too intimidating. Shinmoku would see them as a threat, proof that we're hiding something, Kakashi explained. Assigning our great hero and his promising new students as a gesture of honor and transparency. It's a political move. Your mission isn't just to protect him from assassins, it's to protect this treaty from him. You need to be diplomats as much as you are shinobi. Naruto closed the file with a soft thud. He understood. This was a minefield, a test of control, not power. I see. You really aren't making things easy for me, are you? Kakashi's eye crinkled. The most promising teams are rarely the easiest, he said, echoing his own words from weeks ago. And the most important missions are rarely simple. Lord Shinmoku was every bit as difficult as his file had suggested. He was a short, stout man with a face like a grumpy turtle, and he looked at Naruto and his team with unconcealed disdain. He dismissed Akari's fiery greeting with a grunt, ignored Yumi's respectful bow, and made Sake flinch when he barked at a servant for the temperature of his tea. Their duty was to stand guard outside his chambers in the Konoha Grand Hotel, a luxury establishment reserved for visiting dignitaries. It was mind-numbing work. The first day was a grueling exercise in stillness and silence. Akari fidgeted constantly, earning several sharp glares from Yumi, who stood as still as a statue, her senses on high alert. Sake passed the time by subtly encouraging the potted bonsai trees in the hallway to grow into more pleasing shapes. An act of quiet rebellion that only Naruto noticed. The threat, when it began, was not a kunai in the dark. It was a whisper. A rumor started to circulate among the Iowa delegation that one of Lord Shinmoku's prized ceremonial scrolls, a gift for the Hokage, had been mishandled by Konoha archivists. It was a small thing, a minor breach of protocol, but to a man like Shinmoku, it was a grave insult. The atmosphere grew tense. Then, at a formal dinner, the ceremonial sake gifted from Konoha was found to be subtly watered down, not enough to be obvious, but enough to be an insult to a connoisseur. Again, the blame was shifted towards Konoha's carelessness. Each incident was a small cut, designed to make the alliance bleed. This is no accident, Yumi murmured to Naruto as they stood watch that night. The hallway silent and empty. The incidents are too precise. They're targeted at Lord Shinmoku's specific cultural sensibilities. Someone is deliberately trying to sabotage this treaty. I know, Naruto said, his eyes narrowed in thought. And they're doing it from the inside. There have been no breaches of security. No unauthorized personnel, which means the saboteur is someone with access. The investigation fell to them. While two of them guarded the dignitary, Naruto and the third would quietly probe the incidents. He sent Akari, whose brashness could be mistaken for simple curiosity, to talk to the hotel staff. He sent Yumi, with her keen eye for detail, to review the security logs. He took Sake with him to the Konoha archives to investigate the mishandled scroll. The archives were a quiet, dusty place, a labyrinth of shelves groaning under the weight of history. The archivist on duty was a man Naruto had never seen before. He was of average height and build, with plain brown hair and an utterly forgettable face. He introduced himself as Morino Ibiki's less famous cousin, working a quiet desk job. His name was Kageyama. Ah, Lord Uzumaki, Kageyama said, his voice a polite Dry monotone. He bowed, though the gesture felt hollow. An honor. How can I help you? We're looking into the incident with the Iowa scroll, Naruto said, while Sake stood nervously behind him. We need to see the logbooks for its arrival and handling. Of course. A most unfortunate business, Kageyama said, turning to retrieve a heavy ledger. Such a lapse in our usually meticulous standards. It casts a pall over the entire proceedings. As Kageyama spoke, Naruto felt a strange chill. There was no malice in the man's voice, no deception he could detect. And yet, there was a profound emptiness. A void where emotion should have been. He felt a faint, almost undetectable resonance from the man's chakra, the same discordant wrongness he'd felt from Zabuza, but 1,000 times more subtle. Expertly concealed. The world is built on such fragile things, isn't it? Kageyama continued, laying the ledger on the counter and opening it to the correct page. Trust, alliances, promises, a single drop of water in the sake, a misplaced scroll, and it all begins to unravel. He looked up, his plain brown eyes meeting Naruto's. It makes one wonder if such bonds are worth the effort to maintain. Naruto's senses went on high alert. This wasn't the idle chatter of an archivist. Bonds are what give us strength, Naruto replied, his voice even. They're the reason Konoha is still standing. A faint, cold smile touched Kageyama's lips. Is that what they teach the children now? You, of all people, Lord Uzumaki, should know the price of those bonds. You carry the greatest burden of this village. All for the sake of protecting others. You fought a war to protect those bonds, and how many died? How many children were orphaned? How many shinobi were shattered, their minds and bodies broken? All in service to an ideal. His voice was calm, reasonable, a scalpel of quiet logic. Imagine a Konoha that didn't need to bow to the whims of a paranoid old man from Iowa. A village that relied only on its own undeniable strength. A village free from the weakness of dependence. Isn't that a truer form of peace? An unshakable peace, built not on fragile promises, but on absolute power. It was a chillingly familiar ideology, the siren song of countless villains Naruto had faced. But Kageyama delivered it not with a mad rant, but with the quiet conviction of a scholar who had weighed all the options and found them wanting. The kind of peace you're talking about is called tyranny, Naruto said, his voice turning to ice. It's a peace born of fear, and it never lasts. All systems of control are a form of tyranny, Kageyama countered softly. Yours is just wrapped in a prettier lie. You protect the chains and call it freedom. I would merely break them. He closed the ledger. The logs are all in order, as you can see. The scroll was handled by 3 different chunin. I'm sure a thorough investigation will reveal one of them to be careless. He gave another empty bow. If you need anything else, Lord Uzumaki, do not hesitate to ask. Naruto turned and left, placing a steadying hand on Saki's shoulder, who had been silent and trembling throughout the exchange. As they walked out into the sunlight, the warmth did little to chase away the cold that had settled in Naruto's soul. He had just met the saboteur. And he was far more dangerous than any assassin. The climax came on the final night of the negotiations. The treaty was on the verge of being signed. Despite the small incidents, Naruto and his team had managed to smooth things over, their constant professional presence providing a subtle reassurance to the Iowa delegation. Lord Shinmoku's attitude had even begun to thaw, his grudging respect growing every time he witnessed Naruto handle a situation with quiet competence. The attack was brilliant in its conception. It wasn't a frontal assault. It was a phantom. They were in the hotel's main banquet hall for the signing ceremony. Anbu were posted discreetly around the perimeter. Suddenly, 3 Anbu members dropped from the ceiling, their chakra signatures flaring with killing intent. They moved with deadly precision, ire blades aimed directly at Lord Shinmoku. The Iowa guards moved to intercept, shouting in alarm. The Konoha Anbu moved as well, confused by the betrayal. Chaos erupted, but Naruto had been waiting for it. Team 13, protect Lord Shinmoku. Do not engage the Anbu, he commanded. His voice cut through the pandemonium. Akari didn't hesitate. She slammed her palms together. Earth style. Rising stone wall. A thick barricade of stone shot up from the floor, shielding the dignitary from the immediate attack. It wasn't as massive as Yumi's mud wall, but it was fast and perfectly placed, a sign of her rapidly improving control. The rogue Anbu were fast. They dodged around the wall, their blades flashing. But Yumi was faster. "They're not Anbu," she yelled, her eyes scanning their movements. "Their forms are perfect, but their chakra is wrong. It's disguised." Sake. Now, Sake, who had been standing with her eyes closed amidst the chaos, her hands pressed to the floor, gasped. "Two more, coming from the west hallway. They're the real ones. The attackers. Their chakra feels cold, empty." It was a trap, a false flag. The attackers were disguised to look like Konoha's elite, and the real Anbu were being drawn in to create a scene of Konoha turning on its own guests. If Lord Shinmoku died here, it would mean war. "Yumi, direct our defense. Akari, you're the shield. Sake, you're our eyes. Keep tracking them," Naruto ordered, vanishing in a yellow flash. He wasn't going to fight the attackers. He had to stop the real Anbu from making a fatal mistake. He reappeared between the two converging Anbu squads. "Stand down, all of you. They're imposters," he roared, his voice infused with so much chakra that it physically shook the room. The Anbu faltered, their loyalty to the village hero warring with the evidence of their eyes. That hesitation was all his team needed. Behind the stone wall, the three attackers converged on Lord Shinmoku. The old man, for all his bluster, was frozen in fear. "Stay behind me," Akari yelled, planting herself in front of him. One of the attackers lunged, his blade a blur. Akari met it not with fire, but with a kunai, the screech of steel on steel echoing in the confined space. She was outmatched in skill, but her ferocity was relentless. "Akari, left flank," Yumi called out. An attacker was trying to get around her. Yumi sent a volley of Senbon needles, not aimed to kill, but to disrupt his footing, forcing him back. "One is channeling a jutsu," Sake warned, her eyes still closed. "It's a big one." The third attacker, seeing their direct assault failing, leapt back. His hands a blur of signs. "Stop him," Yumi commanded. Akari was locked in combat. Yumi was too far away to intercept. But Sake acted. She slammed her palms on the ground. The ornate floor tiles cracked as thick, powerful roots, far stronger than the ones she had used against Naruto, erupted from the ground. They didn't just ensnare the caster, they formed a dense, living cage around him, trapping him completely. The other two attackers faltered, their window of opportunity gone. Seeing their plan had failed, they threw down smoke bombs and retreated towards the windows. By the time the smoke cleared, the room was still. The real Anbu stood frozen, looking at Naruto. Lord Shinmoku was pale but unharmed behind Akari's defensive stance, and one of the attackers was trapped in Saki's powerful wood prison. Naruto walked over to the cage of roots and pulled the mask off the captured shinobi. He was a Konoha Chunin, his face pale with fanaticism. His eyes were cold, empty, just as Sake had described. Lord Shinmoku stared, his breath catching in his throat. He had just seen a Genin team, 3 young girls, operate with a level of synergy and skill that would rival most villages' elite forces. He saw Akari's fierce loyalty, Yumi's tactical genius, and Saki's terrifying and beautiful power. Most of all, he saw Naruto Uzumaki, a leader who commanded absolute trust. Who had averted a war not with overwhelming power, but with clarity and faith in his team. Later, as the Chunin was being interrogated, Lord Shinmoku stood with Naruto on a balcony overlooking the moonlit village. "That archivist, Kageyama," the old man said, his voice a low rumble. "He was the one who first brought the mishandled scroll to my attention. He sympathized with my anger towards Konoha. He has a way of making people believe they're on the same side," Naruto said grimly. Shinmoku was silent for a long moment. "In my youth, we were taught that the shinobi of the leaf were monsters, fueled by a thirst for power. Today, I saw 3 children and their sensei put their lives on the line to protect a bitter old man from an enemy village. I saw a bond of trust that my own guard cannot match." He turned to Naruto, the disdain in his eyes gone, replaced by a deep, unwavering respect. "The treaty will be signed tomorrow, Uzumaki. You have my word. It seems I was wrong about Konoha." Naruto simply nodded, his gaze distant. They had won. They had protected the treaty. But his mind was on Kageyama's words, and the cold, empty look in the eyes of his followers. It was the influence of the Oni of silence. He was sure of it now. It wasn't just amplifying negative emotions, it was hollowing people out, turning them into true believers, perfect vessels for an ideology of broken bonds. He looked back into the hotel room, where his team was receiving praise from Kakashi. Akari was trying and failing to look humble, Yumi was giving a concise tactical report, and Sake was quietly healing a cut on Akari's arm. Her touch gentle and warm. He saw the easy camaraderie between them, the fierce loyalty, the unspoken trust. Kageyama was wrong. This was strength. This was the future. And Naruto would protect it. No matter what whispers came from the shadows. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The Heart's True North. The lull after the Iwa incident was a strange kind of peace. It was the quiet of a held breath. A placid surface with unknown currents moving beneath. Team 13 fell into a routine of training in D-rank missions, mending fences, catching stray cats, and painting the Hokage monument. A task Naruto particularly enjoyed inflicting on them as a lesson in humility. The girls grew stronger, their teamwork becoming an unspoken language of glances and gestures. But Naruto could feel the change in them. The admiration they held for him was beginning to bloom into something more complex, something he recognized with a familiar, awkward ache in his chest. Akari's challenges to spar with him became more frequent. Her fiery determination now tinged with a desperate need to impress, to be seen as his equal. Yumi's quiet observations of him grew longer, her analytical gaze softening when she thought he wasn't looking. A silent question hanging in her eyes. And Saki's gentle presence had become a constant orbit. She would bring him tea she had brewed herself from herbs she'd gathered. Or leave a perfectly formed wooden flower on his windowsill. They were small, tender gestures that spoke volumes. He was their sensei, their leader, the man who had shown them their own strength. It was only natural, and it was dangerous. He was wrestling with this new, complicated dynamic when Kakashi summoned them for a new mission. It's AC rank, but it's an unusual one, the Hokage said, unrolling a map on his desk. He pointed to a small, unnamed village nestled deep in the forests that bordered the land of grass. This is Tanagakure, the village hidden in the valley. It's a small, independent settlement, not officially aligned with any of the great nations. They're famous for their unique medicinal herbs. Or, they were. Kakashi's expression turned grim. We received a request for aid 2 weeks ago. The message was disjointed, but it spoke of a sleeping sickness that had befallen the villagers. We sent a team of Konoha's best medical nin. They returned yesterday. They were completely baffled. There are no pathogens, no toxins, no discernible jutsu at play. The people are simply fading. They lose their will, their energy, then slip into a comatose state from which they don't awaken. Their chakra is drained, Naruto asked, his mind immediately going to the insidious nature of the Ona's influence. That's the strange part, Kakashi said, shaking his head. Their chakra coils are intact. It's not their chakra that's missing, but their life force itself. Their sation, their spirit, their will to live. It's being siphoned away by something the medics couldn't identify. He looked directly at Sake. Tanagakure is famous for one other thing. The entire village is built around a colossal, ancient tree they call the Shinju-sama, the god tree. They believe it's the source of the valley's vitality. The medics reported that the tree itself appears to be ailing. Given your unique abilities, Sake, we thought you might be able to perceive something they could not. This is primarily a reconnaissance and diagnostic mission. Engage only if you identify a clear threat. Your goal is to find the cause of this sickness. The journey to Tanagakure was quiet, stark contrast to the nervous energy of their trip to the land of waves. A somber mood hung over them, the mystery of the mission weighing on their minds. As they drew closer, the very air began to change. The forest, which should have been teeming with life, grew unnaturally silent. The birdsong faded, the rustle of animals in the undergrowth ceased. It was a beautiful, lush, and deeply wrong place. They crested a ridge and looked down upon the village. It was idyllic, a collection of wooden houses built in harmony with the surrounding nature, all situated in the shadow of a tree so immense it defied belief. The Shinju-sama was a true giant, its trunk as wide as a small fortress, its branches reaching up to claw at the sky. But its leaves, which should have been a vibrant green, were a sickly, mottled brown. and a palpable aura of decay seemed to emanate from it. The village was silent. No children played in the streets. No smoke rose from the chimneys. It was a ghost town inhabited by the living. They were met at the village entrance by a woman who introduced herself as the elder's daughter, Hannah. She was one of the few who was still on her feet, though her movements were slow. Her face etched with exhaustion and despair. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice a weary rasp. "But I fear you are too late." She led them through the silent streets. The villagers were there, sitting on their porches, staring blankly into the distance. A child sat in a swing, unmoving, his eyes open but vacant. A blacksmith stood by his forge, his hammer resting on the anvil, his face a mask of utter apathy. It was profoundly disturbing. They weren't sad or scared. They were just empty. "It started 2 months ago," Hannah explained. "A slow weariness at first. Then people stopped wanting to work. They stopped eating. Now, most don't even have the energy to get out of bed." She led them to the largest house, at the base of the great tree itself. Inside, the village elder, a woman whose face was a roadmap of wrinkles, lay in a bed, her breathing shallow, her eyes closed. She was one of the afflicted. "My mother tried to stop it," Hannah whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "She spent all her time at the base of the Shinju-sama, praying, performing rituals. She said the god tree was sick, and its sickness was spreading to us. Then, one day, she just didn't wake up." Naruto placed a hand on the elder's forehead. He could feel her chakra, faint but present. But the life force behind it, the spark of her soul, was barely a flicker. He turned to his team. "Akari, Yumi, check the village. Food supplies, water source. Anything that seems out of place. Be respectful, but be thorough." The two nodded and moved out, their expressions grim. Naruto then looked at Sake, who was staring at the wall, her face pale. "Sake, what do you feel?" he asked gently. She flinched, her eyes wide with a familiar fear. "It's loud," she whispered, her hands trembling. "So loud. The whole valley is screaming." Naruto's heart went out to her. He understood. It was like when he was a boy, and the whispers of the villagers were a constant, painful roar in his ears. Or when Kurama's rage would boil up inside him. A storm of hatred that threatened to consume him. He placed a hand on her shoulder. His touch was firm, grounding. "Don't try to block it out. That's like trying to build a dam against the ocean. You'll just break. Open yourself to it, but don't let it in. Be a net, not a sponge. Let it flow through you. Just listen for one voice in the storm. The loudest one. Can you do that?" His voice was calm, steady. A rock in her sea of sensory chaos. She looked up at him, her fearful eyes meeting his steady, understanding gaze. She saw no judgment there, no impatience. Only belief. She took a deep, shaky breath and nodded. "I'll try." He led her outside, to the base of the Shinju-sama. The air here was thick with the tree's palpable pain. The bark was cracked and weeping a black, viscous sap. "Show me," Naruto said softly. Sake hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath and placed her palm flat against the massive trunk. The effect was instantaneous and violent. A wave of pure agony, ancient and overwhelming, slammed into her. It was the collected pain of a dying god. Sake cried out, her knees buckling as visions flooded her mind, images of rot spreading through roots, of life turning to dust, of a deep, chilling cold that extinguished all warmth. Her own chakra flared wildly, her would-release instincts trying to heal the colossal wound, but it was like trying to fill an ocean with a thimble. The effort was tearing her apart. "Sake." Naruto was there in an instant, his hands on her shoulders, pulling her back from the tree. He channeled his own warm, golden chakra into her, a steadying current that pushed back the tide of despair threatening to drown her. "Breathe. Stay with me. You are not the tree. You are Sake Mori of Konoha. You are a part of my team." His voice was an anchor. His chakra was a shield. She focused on it, on him, and slowly, the screaming in her soul began to subside. She collapsed against him, shaking and sobbing, the psychic backlash leaving her utterly drained. He held her, letting her cry, one hand stroking her hair in a comforting gesture. "I'm sorry, Sensei," she whispered into his flak jacket. "I couldn't. It's too much." "You did exactly what you needed to do," he said, his voice a low, soothing rumble. You found it. You faced it. And you survived. I couldn't be prouder of you. He held her for a long moment, giving her time to recover. Akari and Yumi returned then, finding them at the base of the tree. They saw their sensei holding their weeping teammate, and the look of profound, gentle care on his face sent a complicated pang through both of their hearts. There was a flicker of jealousy, yes, but it was overwhelmed by a wave of shared affection for this man who was their unshakable pillar. They saw how he cared for Sake, and they knew, without a doubt, that he would do the same for them. We found nothing, Yumi reported softly, not wanting to intrude on the moment. The village is clean. The resources are untouched. Naruto helped Sake to her feet, though he kept a steadying arm around her. It's not in the village. It's the tree. The elder was right. He looked at Sake. What did you see? Sake took another shaky breath, her composure slowly returning under his steadying presence. A blight, she said, her voice hoarse. Deep in the roots. It's old, ancient, and it's wrong. It's not just a disease. It feels hungry. It's not just killing the tree. It's consuming its life force. And the tree, to survive, is doing the same thing to the land, to the people who are connected to it. The pieces clicked into place. A forbidden jutsu. A desperate act of survival. The elder wasn't just praying, Naruto murmured. She was trying to save the tree. She must have activated some ancient technique, linking the villagers to the Shinju-sama to feed it their life force, hoping to give it the strength to fight off the blight. She sacrificed her people to save her god, Yumi said, her voice laced with a cold horror. From her perspective, she was saving them, Naruto countered. If the tree dies, the valley's unique ecosystem collapses. This village ceases to exist. She chose a slow death over a quick one. So what do we do? Akari demanded, her hands clenched into fists. We have to break that jutsu. We have to free these people. And if we do, the tree dies and the village is destroyed anyway, Yumi pointed out, her strategic mind already calculating the bleak probabilities. It is a classic moral paradox. There is no clean solution. They looked to Naruto, their faces a mixture of confusion, anger, and despair. They were faced with an impossible choice, and for the first time, they had no clear enemy to fight, no villain to punch. Naruto looked at each of them, then his gaze settled on Sake. She was still pale, but the terror in her eyes had been replaced by a quiet resolve. She had faced the abyss and endured. He knew, in that moment, that the choice wasn't his to make. It had to be theirs. This isn't my decision, he said, his voice firm. This is a team decision. Akari, you are the heart of this team. Yumi, you are the mind. And Sake, you are the soul. Tell me, what is the right thing to do? His faith in them was absolute. He wasn't testing them. He was trusting them. Akari spoke first, her voice thick with passion. We have to save the people. A life half lived is no life at all. I would rather die on my feet fighting for a future than live as an empty shell. We break the jutsu, no matter the cost. Yumi countered, her voice calm and measured. Your choice saves them today, Akari. But it could doom them tomorrow. The logical choice is to find a way to mitigate the drain. Perhaps we can regulate the jutsu, lessen its effect, buy the villagers time while we search for a cure for the tree. It is the option that preserves the most life in the long term, even if the quality of that life is diminished. Two opposing views, one driven by emotion, the other by logic. Both valid, both flawed. They turned to Sake. The fate of a village rested on the shoulders of a girl who, just a month ago, was afraid of her own shadow. Sake looked at the dying tree, then at the silent village, and finally at Naruto. She saw the unwavering belief in his eyes, and it gave her a strength she never knew she possessed. They're both right, she said, her voice clear and steady. We can't let the people suffer. But we can't sacrifice their future. So we have to choose a third path. Her eyes glowed with a faint green light as her chakra began to circulate. I can't heal the Shinju-sama. The blight is too deep. Naruto-sensei. The feeling from it, it's like that man in the archives. The cold, the emptiness. It's the same. Naruto's blood ran cold. The Ona's influence. It wasn't just affecting people. It was a poison seeping into the very world. But the tree isn't completely lost, Sake continued, her voice gaining confidence. There is still life in its highest branches. I can feel it. I can't save the parent, but maybe I can save the child. What are you saying? Yumi asked, leaning forward, intrigued. I can use my wood release to connect with the jutsu's nexus point within the tree, Sake explained, her mind working faster than she had ever allowed it to before. I can sever the connections to the villagers. But at the same time, I can find the strongest, healthiest branch and use my own life force to force it to grow into a new sapling. I can pour all of the Shinju-sama's remaining energy, all of its essence, into a new vessel before the blight consumes it all. We can't save the tree, but we can save its spirit. It was a breathtakingly audacious plan. It was also incredibly dangerous. Sake, doing that, Naruto began, his voice tight with concern. It could destroy you. You would be channeling an immense amount of corrupted energy. The backlash could be fatal. I won't be alone, Sake said, and for the first time, she looked not at him, but at her teammates. I can handle the wood release. But I'll need protection. Akari, the blight is a form of rot. It will fight me. It will try to spread. I need you to use your fire, with perfect control, to burn away the corrupted energy as I separate it from the healthy core. You'll be my scalpel. Akari's eyes widened, then hardened with determination. I can do it, Yumi, Sake continued, turning to her other teammate. The transfer of life force will be incredibly volatile. The process will generate a huge amount of heat and unstable chakra. I need you to be my shield. You, say your water release to regulate the temperature, to keep the new sapling from being destroyed before it can even take root. You have to create a perfect balance. Yumi's analytical gaze sharpened. She gave a single, decisive nod. It is a sound strategy. Sake finally looked back at Naruto. And Sensei, I need you to be my anchor. I'm going to have to touch that darkness. I need you to be there to pull me back if I fall. Naruto looked at the three of them. The fiery heart, the cool mind, the gentle soul, all united in a single, desperate, beautiful plan. This was what it meant to be a team. All right, he said, his voice filled with an overwhelming sense of pride. Let's go save a village. They found the nexus of the jutsu in a hidden grotto beneath the tree's roots. At its center was a petrified husk that might have once been the village elder, now fully integrated into a network of blackened, pulsating roots. This was the source of the drain. Get ready, Sake said, taking her position. She plunged her hands into the corrupted root system. The screaming returned, 1,000 times worse than before, but this time, she did not falter. Now, she grunted, her teeth clenched. A wave of black, foul-smelling chakra erupted from the nexus. Akari met it with a controlled stream of pure, white-hot flame, incinerating the corruption with painstaking precision. Yumi created a vortex of pure, cool water that surrounded the area, drawing away the excess heat and chaotic energy. Naruto stood directly behind Sake, his hands on her shoulders, pouring his own chakra into her, a constant, unwavering lifeline of warmth and strength, shielding her mind from the corrupting influence of the blight. He could feel her spirit warring with the ancient darkness, a tiny candle against a hurricane, and he poured all of his belief, all of his will, into protecting that flame. Sake cried out as she found the tree's core. With a final, desperate surge of power, she pulled. The connections to the village snapped. The old, dying life force of the Shinju-sama flooded into her. She screamed as the power threatened to overwhelm her, but then, with a grace and strength she never knew she possessed, she channeled it, guiding it, pushing it into the small, healthy branch she had identified. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a sound like a great, ancient sigh, the SSIVE trunk of the Shinju-sama began to crumble, turning to gray dust and ash. The blighted roots dissolved. The petrified form of the elder crumbled away, her sacrifice finally at an end. And in the center of the grotto, bathed in a soft green light, stood a single, perfect sapling, its leaves glowing with a vibrant, healthy energy. Back in the village, 100 people all took a deep, collective breath. As if waking from a long and terrible dream, a child on a swing began to laugh. A blacksmith picked up his hammer. Life, and hope, had returned to Tanagakure. In the grotto, Sake collapsed, her chakra utterly depleted. Naruto caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her into his arms. She was as light as a leaf. Her eyes fluttered open, and she gave him a weak, triumphant smile. "We did it, Sensei," she whispered. Before succumbing to a deep, healing exhaustion, Naruto held her close, his heart overflowing with a fierce, protective pride. He looked at Akari and Yumi, who were leaning on each other. Exhausted but beaming, they had faced an impossible choice and had forged their own solution with courage, intelligence, and compassion. He carried Sake out of the grotto and into the slowly reawakening village. He knew that what she had done, what they all had done, had changed them forever. And as he felt the light weight of the girl who had saved a village in his arms, he knew that the simple lines between sensei and student were becoming more blurred, more complicated, and infinitely more precious. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. The Unraveling Scroll. Konoha was a city transformed. The familiar, comfortable rhythm of village life had been replaced by the thrum of 1,000 foreign heartbeats. Banners bearing the crests of sand, cloud, mist, and stone hung from every lamppost, a vibrant, temporary tapestry of alliance. The streets were a kaleidoscope of different uniforms and unfamiliar faces. The air, usually smelling of ramen and training ground dust, was now thick with the scent of strange spices. The murmur of different dialects, and a palpable, electric tension. The Chunin exams had begun. For Team 13, the return from Tanagakure had been a quiet triumph. They hadn't faced a legendary ninja, but they had saved a people from a creeping, spiritual death. The experience had settled something deep within them. Sake, who had been the focal point of the mission's terrifying power, now carried herself with a newfound serenity. The fear that had once haunted her eyes had been replaced by a quiet, unshakable confidence. Akari and Yumi looked at her differently. Their respect for her gentle nature now mingled with a profound awe for the strength it concealed. When Naruto formally recommended them for the exams, the girls reacted in character. Akari let out a whoop of excitement that startled a nearby pigeon into flight. Yumi gave a single, sharp nod, her mind already calculating their chances and analyzing potential opponents. Sake simply smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that seemed to light up the Hokage's office. This was it, the next step on their path. The chance to prove, not just to the world but to themselves, that they were worthy of the flak jackets they would one day wear. Don't mistake this for a reward, Naruto had warned them as they left the tower, his voice cutting through their excitement. It's a test, and it's designed to break you. More ninja fail than pass. The competition will be fierce. They won't be holding back, and neither can you. His words were a splash of cold water, but they didn't douse their spirits. They ignited them. The first test was held in a cavernous, sterile classroom in the academy, the air thick with the oppressive silence of 100 nervous genin. Ibiki Morino, his scarred face a testament to 1,000 interrogations, stood at the front, his presence alone a more effective deterrent against cheating than any proctor. The test was, on its surface, a written exam of impossible difficulty. But as Naruto had taught them, the true objective is rarely the obvious one. The test wasn't about what they knew, it was about how they could acquire the information they didn't. Akari stared at the questions, a low growl of frustration building in her throat. She could feel the familiar surge of fiery impatience, the urge to just burn the whole test to a crisp. Then she felt Naruto's phantom voice in her ear. His words from the tree climbing exercise. Focus the fire. She took a slow, deep breath. Anger was a tool, not a master. She didn't have Yumi's intellect or Saki's senses, but she had guts. She confidently answered the few questions she knew, then spent the rest of the time watching. She observed the other candidates, the proctors, the subtle tells of a cheater about to be caught. She wasn't gathering answers, she was gathering intelligence on the nature of the test itself, a different kind of victory. Yumi was in her element. The room was a puzzle box, and she was a master of solving them. She had already identified the two Chunin in the room who were disguised as genin, planted with the answers. Cheating off them was the point. Using a minuscule, perfectly angled bead of W.8 she'd created and placed on her desk, she had a clear, refracted view of one of the plant's papers. She transcribed the answers with a calm, detached precision, her brush strokes as elegant and deadly as a well-placed senbon. Saki's approach was the most subtle of all. She closed her eyes, appearing to be meditating. But she was listening, not with her ears, but with her chakra. She could feel the anxious spikes of chakra from those who were guessing, the smooth, confident flow from those who knew the answers. She felt the subtle shift in the air as a sand ninja manipulated a third eye of sand. The almost undetectable hum of a cloud ninja's pencil as it received faint electrical signals. She didn't copy their answers, she simply used their confidence as a guide, confirming her own educated guesses. A gentle nudge from the collective unconscious of the room. When Ibiki called time and revealed the true nature of the test with his infamous 10th question, Team 13 passed without breaking a sweat. Their success a quiet testament to their sensei's teachings. The second stage was a brutal shift from the cerebral to the primal. The 44th training ground, better known as the Forest of Death, was a place of legend. A sprawling, untamed wilderness sealed behind a high fence and 100 warning signs. Enko Mitarashi, with her wild energy and a morbid grin that promised pain, explained the rules. A 5-day survival test. Each team was given either a heaven or an earth scroll. To pass, they had to reach the tower in the center of the forest with both scrolls in their possession. And one last piece of advice. Enko had chirped, holding up a kunai. Try not to die. The moment the gates opened, the forest swallowed them whole. Team 13 moved with a practiced efficiency, Yumi taking point, Sake watching their backs and extending her senses, and Akari acting as their fierce, vigilant core. They secured their heaven scroll and immediately began formulating a plan. The most logical course is avoidance, Yumi stated, her finger tracing a line on a map she had already started sketching from memory. Most teams will rush into conflict. We should find a defensible pause. Ishin near a water source and let them thin each other out. We can engage a weakened team on day 3 or 4. Boring, Akari complained. I say we find the strongest looking team out there and take their scroll on day 1. No messing around. Before Sake could offer a gentler, middle ground approach, a presence slammed into her senses, so sudden and violent it made her gasp. Company, she hissed. 3 of them. They're fast. They barely had time to react before 3 figures dropped from the canopy, landing in a perfect triangle around them. They were from Kurigakure, their headbands proudly displayed. The one in the lead, a tall boy with sharp, cruel eyes and sea-green hair named Kai, had a predatory smirk on his face. Beside him stood a massive, bull-necked boy, Guro, who cracked his knuckles with a sound like rocks grinding together. The third was a girl, Rin, whose face was a blank, a motionless mask, her eyes seeming to look straight through them. Well, Kai said, his voice dripping with arrogance. Konoha's little darlings. I heard a team of rookie girls managed to take down some of Zabuza's old lackeys. Pathetic. Zabuza was a disgrace to our village. And so are you. Hand over your scroll, Guro grunted, taking a menacing step forward. And we might not break you too badly. Akari's temper, always simmering just below the surface, ignited. You want it? Come and get it, she roared, her hands already flying through signs. The fight was a disaster. It wasn't a battle, it was a mauling. Kai was a master of water style, his techniques powerful and vicious. He met Akari's fire head-on, his massive water dragons overwhelming her fireballs, turning the ground into a muddy quagmire. Guro was a force of nature, a taijutsu specialist who moved with a speed that defied his size. He bulldozed through Yumi's carefully laid wire traps and met her precise attacks with overwhelming brute force. But the true threat was Rin. While her teammates engaged them physically, she attacked their minds. Sake suddenly cried out, stumbling back, her eyes wide with terror as a genjutsu took hold, making her see the forest floor writhe with blighted, corrupted roots, an echo of her trauma in Tanigakure. Yumi found her thoughts becoming sluggish, her strategic mind clouded by a subtle, disorienting illusion that made her second-guess every move. Akari's vision swam, making her fiery punches miss their mark. They were systematically dismantled. Yumi, seeing the battle was lost, made the call. Water style. Hidden mist jutsu. She blanketed the area in a thick fog, a pale imitation of Zabuza's, but enough. Retreat. Now. They fled, humiliated and disoriented, the sound of Kai's mocking laughter chasing them through the trees. They didn't stop running until Sake, finally breaking free of the genjutsu with a pained sob, confirmed they were no longer being followed. They collapsed by a stream, their bodies bruised, their pride in tatters. They were toying with us, Akari spat, slamming a fist against a tree trunk, leaving a scorched mark. They could have taken our scroll at any time. They wanted to break us. Their teamwork was flawless, Yumi said, her voice a cold, analytical monotone as she bandaged a cut on her arm. Their assault was psychological as well as physical. We were comprehensively defeated. Sake was quiet, hugging her knees to her chest, the memory of the illusion still making her tremble. The loss was a bitter pill. Their recent victories had made them confident, perhaps overconfident. The team from Kiri had reminded them that there was always a bigger fish. They didn't speak for a long time. The defeat hung heavy in the air. But they were Naruto's students. They had faced down death, despair, and impossible odds. They would not be broken by a single loss. Okay, Akari said, her voice low but steady, the anger replaced by grim determination. So they're strong. So what? We're not fighting them again. Not yet. She's right, Yumi agreed, her eyes sharp. A direct confrontation is foolish. We must adapt. We will acquire our Earth Scroll through stealth and superior strategy. Sake looked up, a flicker of her newfound strength returning. There's a team from the village of grass 2 kilometers to the east. They're tired. Their chakra is low, and they're arguing. The hunt was on. They moved like ghosts, their earlier defeat honing their senses, sharpening their resolve. They tracked the grass team, observed their patterns, and laid a perfect trap. It was over in minutes, a silent, efficient takedown using non-lethal snares and a well-timed sleep-inducing mist from one of Saki's pouches. They took the Earth Scroll without a single punch being thrown. It wasn't a glorious victory, but it was a smart one. They had learned their lesson. When the preliminaries were announced in the half-ruined tower, Team 13 stood opposite Team Shio. Kai gave them a dismissive sneer. Look what crawled out of the mud. I'm surprised you made it. Akari's jaw tightened, but she held her tongue, a feat of control that was a victory in itself. The electronic scoreboard flickered, and names began to appear. And then, fate delivered its punchline. Akari Hino vs. Goro. A savage grin split Goro's face. Akari met it with a fiery glare. The arena was a small, enclosed space, perfect for a brawler like Goro. He came at her like a freight train, his fists like sledgehammers. Akari, fueled by the memory of their humiliating defeat, met him head-on, her fists wreathed in flame. It was a brutal exchange of blows, the impact of their strikes shaking the very foundations of the tower. But Goro's raw physical power was immense. For every blow she landed, he landed too, his heavy fists cracking her guard and sending her stumbling back. From the balcony, Naruto watched, his arms crossed. Yumi and Sake stood beside him, their expressions tense. He offered no words of encouragement, no tactical advice. He had taught Akari the lessons. It was up to her to remember them. Akari coughed, wiping a trickle of blood from her lip. She was losing. Her rage, her desire for revenge, was making her predictable. She was fighting Goro's fight. Focus the fire. The words echoed in her mind. It's a tool, not just a weapon. She took a breath, and her entire fighting style changed. She stopped trying to match his strength. Instead, she became fire itself. She channeled small, controlled bursts of flame from the soles of her feet, not as an attack, but as a form of propulsion. She became a flickering, unpredictable blur, her movements suddenly impossibly fast and agile. Goro's lumbering punches now hit empty air. She was too fast, too fluid. You can't run forever, he roared in frustration, swinging wildly. I'm not running, she panted, appearing behind him. I'm repositioning. She used her flame jets to stick to the wall, then launched herself downwards. Instead of a wide, powerful punch, she focused all of her chakra into a single point. Her index finger glowing like a miniature sun. It was the exercise he had taught her, perfected in the heat of battle. She struck a precise blow to the back of Goro's neck, a pinpoint. NT application of intense heat and kinetic force to a major nerve cluster. Goro's eyes went wide with shock. His massive body seized up, and he crashed to the floor, unconscious. Silence. Then, the arena erupted in cheers. Akari stood over her fallen opponent, breathing heavily, her body bruised but her spirit soaring. She had won, not with rage, but with skill. She looked up at the balcony and met Naruto's gaze. He gave her a single, Almost imperceptible nod. It was more praise than she had ever hoped for. As the medics carried Guro out and the next match was about to be called, Naruto suddenly stiffened. His head snapped to the side, his gaze fixed on a distant wall as if he could see right through it. That chakra, that cold, empty wrongness. He had just felt a flicker of it, somewhere deep within the tower. "I'll be right back," he said to Yumi and Sake, his voice low and serious. "Stay here. Watch the fights. Learn." He vanished in a swirl of leaves, leaving them to watch the rest of the matches. A new unease settling over them. Naruto moved through the tower's corridors like a wraith, his senses stretched to their limit. The signature was faint, masked by the thrum of 100 other shinobi. But it was unmistakably Kageyama's. It led him to the tower's central records room, a place even more secure than the main archives. The door was sealed with a high-level fuinjutsu. An Anbu guard lay on the floor, not dead, but caught in a powerful stasis jutsu, his eyes wide with a silent scream. The seal on the door was dissolving, eaten away by a black, corrosive chakra that say, "E-med to drain the very life from the air." Naruto burst through just as a figure in a simple archivist's uniform pocketed a large, cylindrical scroll. It was Kageyama. He turned, his face calm, utterly devoid of surprise. "Uzumaki," he said, his voice the same dry monotone. "I should have known your senses were sharp." "The Chunin exams," Naruto said, his fists clenching. "The perfect distraction. What did you take?" Kageyama held up the scroll. It was ancient, its casing made of a strange, black, non-reflective material, bound with chakra-suppressing seals that were now flickering and dying. Just a piece of forgotten history. A story about a being of immense power, an entity that fed on the very bonds you hold so dear. A being that was sealed away long ago because the world was not ready for its truth. He smiled. That same cold, empty smile. The Oni of silence. The name sent a shiver down Naruto's spine. It was a name from the darkest legends, a bedtime story used to scare academy students. A boogeyman. But the scroll in Kageyama's hand, and the chilling conviction in his eyes, were terrifyingly real. "Its time has come again," Kageyama said. "This world, with its fragile alliances and pathetic attachments, is choking on its own lies. The Oni will be the cure. It will break the chains. It will bring a true, silent peace." Before Naruto could move, Kageyama crushed a small pellet in his hand. A blinding flash of black light erupted, and when Naruto's vision cleared, the man was gone. The only thing left behind was a lingering cold and the unconscious Anbu guard, finally released from the stasis jutsu. Naruto returned to the arena balcony just as the final preliminary match was ending. Yumi and Sake looked at him, their faces full of questions, but he just shook his head slightly, his expression grim. The finals were set. Their team had made it. But a far more dangerous contest had just begun. The attack came during the final match of the tournament. Yumi had fought a brilliant battle against Kai, a high-speed chess match of water jutsu that she had narrowly lost due to his slightly larger chakra reserves. Sake, in a stunning display, had defeated Rin by turnin. The entire arena into a writhing forest, her wood style so vibrant and full of life it had simply overwhelmed the Kiri ninja's deathly illusions. The rivalry was fierce, but a grudging respect had been born. Then, the explosions began. It wasn't like Orochimaru's invasion years ago, a chaotic rampage. This was a precise, coordinated strike. Kageyama's followers, hidden among the crowd, rose as one. They didn't target civilians indiscriminately. They moved with purpose, sealing off exits, targeting the daimyo's box, creating tactical chaos designed to fracture the chain of command. Naruto was already moving, a yellow flash appearing beside Kakashi to defend the dignitaries. But he didn't need to give his team orders. They were already in motion. "Protect the civilians," Yumi commanded, her voice cutting through the screams. They became a blur of motion. Akari, no longer just a brawler, used her fire to create controlled walls of flame, herding panicked civilians towards the safest exits. Yumi used her water jutsu to create slick traps for the attackers and douse the fires that had started to spread. Sake was a whirlwind of green, her wood jutsu creating massive, protective shields of woven branches over clusters of screaming families, deflecting kunai and exploding tags. They found themselves fighting back to back with Team Shio. The Kiri ninja, seeing the attack on an allied village, reacted instantly. Kai's powerful water dragons now worked in concert with Akari's fire walls. Goro's brute strength cleared paths through the rubble for Saki's roots to evacuate the injured. Their exam rivalry was incinerated in the heat of a real battle, replaced by the grim solidarity of shinobi. Amidst the chaos, Naruto looked up. There, standing on the highest point of the stadium roof, silhouetted against the smoke-filled sky, was Kageyama. He wasn't fighting. He was observing, judging. He looked down at Naruto, and their eyes met across the field of battle. Kageyama held up the black scroll, a silent declaration. This is just the beginning. Then he vanished. The attack subsided as quickly as it had begun, Kageyama's followers melting back into the chaos. The arena was a wreck, but casualties were minimal, thanks to the swift, coordinated actions of the Genin. Team 13 stood together, covered in dust and grime, their chakra low but their spirits unbroken. They looked up at the Hokage monument, where Naruto now stood beside Kakashi, coordinating the response. They had entered the arena that morning as Genin, hoping to earn a new vest. They had left as heroes, defenders of their home. Their will of fire tested and proven. The exam was over. Their war had just begun. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The Weight of a Name. The week following the invasion was a city holding its breath. The festive banners were gone, replaced by the grim sight of scaffolding and repair crews. The cheerful bustle of the exams had been supplanted by the quiet, purposeful movements of Anbu patrols on the rooftops and the grave. Low conversations of Jonin in the streets. Kageyama was no longer a whisper in the archives. He was a name spoken with venom, a tangible threat that had scarred their home. Team 13 was praised, promoted. All three were officially made Chunin in a small, private ceremony with the Hokage, and then promptly grounded. The promotion was an acknowledgement of their heroism. The grounding a stark reminder of the new, dangerous reality. Naruto drilled them relentlessly, pushing them past their limits, his usual easygoing nature replaced by a sharp, demanding intensity. He wasn't just their sensei anymore. He was a commander forging his weapons for the war he knew was coming. The summons came on a crisp autumn morning. Kakashi looked tired, the weight of leadership visible in the slump of his shoulders. "We have a lead," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. It wasn't a mission scroll, but a thin intelligence docket. One of Kageyama's followers, a former logistics officer named Kinu, has been tracked to the lake country, near the border of the land of hot water. The area is under the traditional jurisdiction of the Mizushima clan. Naruto saw Yumi stiffen beside him, the only outward sign of her reaction. Her composure was, as always, a mask of ice, but he could feel the sudden chill that came off her. The Mizushima are notoriously private, Kakashi continued, his gaze resting on Yumi. They value their autonomy and their traditions above all else. They won't respond well to an Anbu squad kicking down their doors. But they might listen to one of their own. "Yumi, your father is the clan head. He has agreed to a formal visit. Your mission is to secure his cooperation, locate Kinu, and bring him in for interrogation. This is a diplomatic mission first, and capture and retrieval second." "Understood, Lord Hokage," Yumi said, her voice perfectly level, betraying nothing. But Naruto saw it, a flicker of something deep in her eyes, a shadow of a memory. A ghost of a pain she kept locked away. He had seen that look before. He saw it in the mirror every morning. The journey to the Mizushima clan compound was a study in contrasts. The landscape transformed from the familiar, warm greens of the land of fire to a cool, misty region of towering pines and crystal-clear lakes that reflected the gray sky like polished steel. The air grew colder, cleaner, and carried the scent of pine needles and damp earth. Yumi grew quieter with every step. Her usual calm, analytical presence was still there, but it was now brittle, like a thin sheet of ice over a deep, dark current. Akari, sensing her teammates' unease, reined in her usual boisterous energy. Her attempts at conversation met with clipped, one-word answers. Sake walked beside Yumi, offering a silent, supportive presence. But even she seemed unable to penetrate the wall her friend had erected around herself. The Mizushima compound was not a village, but an estate. It was built on a series of interconnected islands in the center of a vast, mist-shrouded lake. Elegant wooden bridges arched over the water, and buildings with sweeping, blue-tiled roofs seemed to float amongst the ancient trees. It was beautiful, serene, and utterly intimidating. Every line was perfect, every garden meticulously raked. It was a place of rigid, unyielding order. They were met on the main bridge by a man who was an older, harder version of Yumi. He had the same dark blue hair, tied back in a formal knot, and the same intelligent, analytical eyes. But where Yumi's gaze was calm, his was cold. Where her posture was poised, his was rigid. This was Lord Kenshin Mizushima, and he looked at his daughter not with fatherly affection, but with the critical eye of a general inspecting a subordinate. His gaze swept over Akari and Sake. A flicker of unconcealed disdain in his eyes. You bring outsiders to our home, Yumi. A civilian girl who reeks of ash and a child who plays with splinters. Is this the company you keep now? This is my team, father, Yumi replied, her voice glacially calm. Akari Hino, Sake Mori, and this is our Genin leader, Naruto Uzumaki. Kenshin's eyes settled on Naruto, and for the first time, his cold composure wavered. He was looking at a living legend, the hero of the war. But the flicker of awe was quickly replaced by renewed frostiness. Lord Uzumaki, your reputation precedes you. I trust you understand that in this place, the traditions of my clan outweigh the directives of your Hokage. I understand that we have a common enemy, Naruto said, his voice polite but firm. Kageyama's ideology is a threat to all of us, traditions included. Indeed, Kenshin conceded with a slight, formal bow. We have tracked the sympathizer, Hinu, to a small, abandoned shrine in the mountain pass overlooking the lake. He is a coward, not a warrior. Capturing him will be simple. He turned his gaze back to Yumi. But Konoha's request for cooperation comes at a time when my council has been questioning your own path. You abandoned your clan duties to pursue the life of a standard shinobi. You disgraced us in the Chunin exams, allowing yourself to be defeated. Mi's hands clenched into fists at her sides. I placed second in the finals. It was not a disgrace. To a Mizushima, anything but first is a failure, he stated, the words like chips of ice. You rely on these emotional bonds. On teamwork. The Mizushima way is the way of water. It is adaptable, yes, but it is ultimately solitary and overwhelming. It finds the cracks in its enemy and crushes them with relentless, dispassionate force. You have forgotten this. He gestured to the mountain pass, a dark gash in the distant peaks. You will bring us the traitor. But you will do it alone. Prove you are still worthy of the name Mizushima. Your team will remain here as our guests. It was a challenge, a test, a direct, calculated insult to her and her team. Yumi looked at her father, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Naruto thought he saw the old, hesitant girl from the academy. Then, she took a slow breath, the ice in her eyes hardening into diamond. I will accept your mission, she said. But you are mistaken, father. I am not alone. I am the mind of my team. I will devise the plan. But Akari is our heart. Sake is our soul. Naruto Sensei is our will. To send me alone is to send a body without its spirit. We will undertake this mission as Team 13, or not at all. The defiance, spoken with such unshakable calm, hung in the cold air. Kenshin stared at his daughter, a muscle twitching in his jaw. It was a battle of wills, as fierce as any clash of jutsu. Naruto stepped forward slightly. Lord Kenshin, he said, his voice respectful but carrying an undeniable authority. I trained this team. I know their strengths better than anyone. Yumi is correct. Their strength is not in their individual skills, but in their synergy. You want Kinu captured. Team 13 is your best chance for a clean, efficient success. Kenshin was silent for a long, tense moment. He was trapped. To refuse the hero of the war would be a diplomatic incident. To acquiesce would be to admit his daughter might be right. Very well, he finally bit out, the words clipped. But know this, Yumi. When your sentimental approach fails, the shame will be yours alone. He turned and swept back towards the main house, his robes billowing behind him like a storm cloud. That night, the tension in their guest quarters was thick enough to cut with a kunai. Akari was pacing, muttering angrily about arrogant clan heads. Sake was trying, and failing, to meditate. Yumi sat by the window, staring out at the reflection of the moon on the black, still water of the lake. She was disassembling and meticulously cleaning her tools. Her movements precise and mechanical, a desperate attempt to impose order on the chaos she felt inside. Naruto watched her for a while, then walked over and sat down opposite her. "He's wrong, you know," Naruto said quietly. Yumi didn't look up from polishing a Senbon needle. "From his perspective, he is right. I failed to meet his expectations. In our clan, expectation is everything. I know a little something about that," Naruto murmured. He leaned back, his gaze also turning to the moon on the water. "For the first 12 years of my life, the only expectation anyone had of me was that I'd be a monster. A failure. A weapon that might go off. So I screamed and fought and pulled pranks, just trying to get anyone to see me. To see Naruto." He paused, and the girls stopped what they were doing to listen. He rarely spoke of his childhood. Then, after the war, everything changed. Suddenly, I wasn't just Naruto anymore. I was the son of the fourth Hokage. The hero of the leaf. People started expecting me to be like my dad. A genius, a leader, a perfect shinobi. They looked at me and saw him. It was a different kind of cage, but it was still a cage. He looked at Yumi, his blue eyes holding a profound depth of understanding. The weight of a name, a legacy, it can crush you if you let it. You spend so much time trying to be what everyone expects you to be, you forget who you actually are. My dad was a great man. But I'm not him. I had to choose my own path. I had to decide that being Naruto Uzumaki, the knucklehead who loves ramen and never gives up on his friends, was more important than being the fourth Hokage's legacy. He reached out and gently stilled her hands. Your father wants you to be a Mizushima. But you're already something more. You're Yumi. You're a Chunin of the Leaf. You're part of Team 13. That's not a failure. That's a choice. And it's the reason you're going to succeed tomorrow. Yumi stared at him, her icy composure finally cracking. A single, perfect tear welled in her eye and traced a silent path down her cheek. She wasn't just looking at her sensei, the powerful hero. She was seeing the boy who had been so desperately alone. The man who had struggled under a weight she understood all too well. It was a moment of profound, shared vulnerability. He wasn't just her leader, he understood her. In that moment of quiet connection, her deep respect for him solidified into something warmer, deeper, and far more personal. Akari and Sake watched from across the room, a silent understanding passing between them. They were witnessing a part of him that few ever got to see, and it drew them all closer, not just to him, but to each other. The shrine was nestled high in the mountain pass, a small, dilapidated structure clinging to the cliffside. Sake confirmed it with her senses. One man inside, his chakra signature nervous and erratic. The approach is a single, narrow path, Yumi said, pointing to a crude map she had drawn in the dirt. He'll have it watched. A direct assault is what my father would expect. It would be noisy and destructive. We will do the opposite. She looked at her team, her eyes clear and focused. All traces of the previous night's turmoil gone. Sake, you are our way in. The cliff face below the shrine is sheer rock, but it is covered in moss and ancient vines. Can you use them to create handholds for us? A silent, vertical approach. Sake smiled. It will be as easy as walking upstairs. Akari, Yumi continued, turning to the fiery Kunoichi. Your role is the diversion. But not a loud one. Hinu is a logistics officer. Not a frontline fighter. His paranoia is his weakness. I need you to create a series of small, precise, and confusing sounds on the main path. A falling rock, a snapping twig, a whisper on the wind. Use your chakra control to mimic the sounds of an approaching squad, but one that is clumsy and trying to be stealthy. It will draw all of his attention to the front. Akari grinned, cracking her knuckles. Mind games. I like it. Once we are in position, Yumi concluded, we take him down. Clean. Silent. No jutsu if we can avoid it. We will prove to my faith that there is more than one way to be water. The plan unfolded with the quiet perfection of a master watchmaker's design. Saki's vines grew and thickened, forming a silent ladder up the sheer cliff. As they ascended, Akari, positioned 100 meters away, began her performance. A pebble, superheated with a pinpoint of chakra, would explode with a sharp crack. A small gust of wind, created with a controlled flick of her wrist, would rustle the leaves on the path in a perfect imitation of a misplaced footstep. Hinu's anxious chakra spiked with every sound, his senses focused entirely on the path he expected them to take. Team 13 slipped over the ledge behind the shrine like ghosts. They entered through a rotten back wall, their footsteps making no sound. Hinu was crouched by the front door, a kunai in his trembling hand. Peering through a crack in the wood, he never knew they were there. Yumi appeared behind him, a shadow detaching from the other shadows. A single, precise chop to the back of his neck, and Kageyama's follower crumpled to the floor, unconscious. They returned to the Mizushima estate as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lake. They walked across the main bridge, Yumi in the lead, with Akari and Sake flanking the bound and gagged Kinu. Lord Kenshin was waiting for them, his face an impassive mask. He looked at the captured man, then at the pristine state of their uniforms. There were no signs of a struggle, no scorch marks, no collateral damage. The shrine is untouched, Yumi stated, her voice even. Your territory has not been dishonored by a messy battle. The traitor is yours to question. Kenshin stared at her, his cold eyes searching for any sign of weakness, of failure. He found none. He found only a calm, confident shinobi who had completed her mission with a level of elegance and efficiency that even he could not fault. She hadn't used overwhelming force. She had used her team. She had used her mind. She had been like water, yes, but not a solitary tsunami. She had been a part of a perfectly controlled tide. He didn't praise her. He didn't smile. Men like Kenshin didn't know how. But he gave her a single, slow nod. It was a minuscule gesture, but for Yumi, it was the breaking of a dam. It was acceptance. It was respect. As they prepared to leave the next morning, Yumi stood with her father on the shore of the lake. Your path is unorthodox, Kenshin said, his gaze fixed on Naruto and the others waiting on the bridge. But I can no longer say it is without merit. You have grown, Yumi. Do not disgrace the name you carry. I won't, Yumi said. And for the first time, she smiled at him, a small but genuine smile. And I will not disgrace theirs, either. She turned and walked towards her team, towards her sensei. Towards the man who had taught her that the weight of a name was nothing compared to the strength of a bond. She walked away from the cold, rigid perfection of her past and towards the warm, chaotic, and infinitely stronger future she had chosen for herself. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. The Shadow of the Oni. The interrogation rooms in Konoha's T&I headquarters were designed to be soul-crushingly sterile. Gray walls, gray floor, gray table, no windows. The only variable was the truth, and Ibiki Morino was a master at extracting it. Hinu, the logistics officer, sat shivering under the glare of a single bare bulb. He had been stripped of his Mizushima-provided gag and was now a sweating, terrified mess. Naruto stood in the shadows behind Ibiki, a silent, imposing presence. He was there to observe, but also as a deterrent. Hinu could feel the hero's chakra, a dormant volcano in the corner of the room, and it terrified him more than Ibiki's scarred face. Kageyama is a fool, Hinu babbled, his voice cracking. He spoke of a new world, a perfect order. I thought it was just politics. An ideology. I move supplies, I file reports. I'm not a warrior. I didn't know what he was really planning. And what is he planning? Ibiki asked, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that seemed to vibrate in Kinu's very bones. The scroll. Hinu gasped, his eyes wide with a fanatic's terror. The one from the exams. It's not a history, it's a key. It showed him the way to the Johatsu no Mori, the forest of evaporation. There's a shrine there, an old, evil place. The shrine of silence. Naruto stepped forward from the shadows, his presence flooding the room with pressure. What's in the shrine? The Oni, Hinu whispered, the word like a curse on his lips. Its body, its prison. Kageyama means to wake it up. He believes he can control it, use its power to sever the bonds of the world. To silence the chaos of emotion and loyalty and create a world of perfect, empty order. Hinu began to sob, his composure completely shattered. The scroll detailed the ritual. It needs components. A willing vessel to accept the power, Kageyama himself. A catalyst of immense, pure chakra, the scroll named the Nine Tails. And an anchor, something deeply connected to the life of the world, a user of wood release. The air in the room went cold. Naruto's eyes narrowed, the pieces of the puzzle snapping together with horrifying clarity. Ibiki looked from Kinu to Naruto, understanding dawning on his face. He doesn't have to capture us, Naruto said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. He just has to get us there. Our presence is the key. He's been leading us on a leash from the very beginning. Kakashi's office felt like the eye of a hurricane. The news from the T&I department had spread a quiet, high-level panic through Konoha's leadership. The Oni of Silence was no longer a myth. It was an active, world-ending threat. Team 13 stood before the Hokage's desk. The mood was grim. The usual pre-mission energy was gone, replaced by the heavy weight of their new reality. Kageyama has made his move, Kakashi said, his voice devoid of its usual languid tone. He was all Hokage now. He is at the Shrine of Silence. Your mission is S rank. You will proceed to the Johatsu no Mori, infiltrate the shrine, and stop Kageyama from completing the ritual. By any means necessary. He looked at each of them, his gaze lingering on Naruto. This is Kageyama's endgame. He will be expecting you. The entire region is likely saturated with the Ona's influence. This will be a battle for your minds as much as your bodies. Naruto, get them there, and get them back. We will not fail, Naruto said. It wasn't a boast, it was a vow. The Johatsu no Mori lived up to its name. It was a place where life had evaporated. The forest was a graveyard of petrified, skeletal trees, their branches clawing at a sky the color of a bruise. A perpetual, sickly gray mist clung to the ground, and the air was cold, dead, and utterly silent. There were no birds, no insects, no life. The only sound was the crunch of desiccated leaves under their boots. The Ona's influence was a palpable thing, a low, subsonic hum of pure despair that vibrated in their skulls. With every step deeper into the forest, the pressure increased. It was a subtle poison, seeping into the cracks of their resolve. Akari was the first to feel it. She found herself lagging, her usual fiery steps becoming heavy, sluggish. A vision flickered at the edge of her sight. The fight in the Chunin exams, Goro's massive fists crashing through her guard. But this time, her fire wasn't there. She punched, and only a pathetic puff of smoke emerged. She saw the sneering face of the Kiri ninja, Kai, as he effortlessly extinguished her greatest jutsu with a wave of his hand. She saw her teammates fall, heard their screams, while she stood there, her fists heavy and useless, her fire nothing but dead ash. The fear wasn't of pain or death. It was the cold, terrifying certainty of her own inadequacy. Akari, on me. Naruto's voice cut through the vision like a kunai. She blinked, and the forest was just a forest again, dead and gray. Her fists were clenched so tight her knuckles were white. I'm fine, she stammered, but her voice lacked its usual force. No, you're not, Naruto said, stopping the team. He looked at her, his gaze unwavering. This place feeds on fear. It finds your weakest point and hammers it until it breaks. What did you see? I saw. I couldn't fight, she admitted, the words tasting like shame. My flames were gone. I couldn't protect anyone. Your fire isn't just in your hands, Akari, Naruto said, his voice firm. It's here. He tapped his chest. It's your will, your loyalty. As long as you have something to protect, it can never be extinguished. This place is lying to you. Don't listen. His words were a shield, a reaffirmation of the truth she knew deep down. She took a shaky breath, the warmth returning to her limbs. Right, I won't. Next, the influence targeted Yumi. As she scanned the path ahead, her mind, her greatest asset, turned against her. Every potential route she mapped became a death trap. A frontal assault on the shrine. A 98% chance of failure due to unknown defenses. A stealth approach. 99% chance of failure due to the Ona's sensory abilities. Every variable, every contingency, led to the same cold, logical conclusion: mission failure. Annihilation. The death of her team. The end of the world. Her strategic mind, which had always provided her with answers, now only screamed a single paralyzing word: hopeless. She froze mid-step, her face pale. We can't continue, she said, her voice a flat, clinical monotone. The probability of success is statistically negligible. To proceed is illogical. Naruto stopped in front of her, blocking her path. He didn't argue with her logic. Yumi, look at me. When we were in the land of waves, facing Zabuza in the mist, what were our chances then? She blinked, the question cutting through her paralysis. Low, very low. During the exams, against a team that had already humiliated you. Also low. What about Tanigakure? An impossible choice with no right answer. The odds were, she trailed off. They were 0. Naruto finished for her. There was no logical path to victory. So Sake invented one. Sometimes, Yumi, you have to throw the numbers away. You have to have faith. Not in a plan, but in your team. In yourself. Your mind is a weapon, not a prison. Stop calculating the odds of failure and start creating the path to victory. He was right. Logic had its limits. She had seen it, lived it. She had overcome impossible odds not because the numbers were in her favor, but because her team had defied them. The cold certainty in her mind receded, replaced by the familiar, sharp clarity of a strategist ready for a challenge. Understood, Sensei. The Ona's assault on Sake was the most insidious of all. She didn't see visions. She felt them. With every step, the deadness of the land seeped into her. Her connection to the world, the vibrant web of life she had always felt, was being replaced by a horrifying, silent emptiness. It was the feeling of the blight from the Shinju-sama, magnified 1,000 times. She felt her own life force being drained away, her wood release becoming a conduit not for life, but for the Ona's creeping rot. She stumbled, a hand going to her chest, a gasp escaping her lips. She felt a phantom cold spreading from her core, the terrifying sensation of becoming one with the dead forest around her. Naruto was at her side in an instant, his warm, golden chakra flooding into her, a sunbeam in the dead of winter. It didn't heal the feeling, but it held it at bay. It hurts, she whispered, her voice trembling. It's so cold. It's trying to get inside me. I know, he said, his voice softer than it had been for the others. You feel it more than any of us. You're like a tuning fork for the world's life force, and right now, the world is screaming. But you know what else that makes you? He waited until she met his eyes. It makes you the only one who can truly fight it. Akari's fire can cauterize the wound. Yumi's mind can find a way through the darkness. But you, Sake, you can heal it. Your connection to life is stronger than its connection to death. You proved that. Don't fear the cold. Be the warmth that drives it out. He didn't let go of her shoulder, his chakra a constant, comforting presence. She leaned into it, drawing strength from his unwavering belief in her. The cold was still there, a chilling presence at the edge of her soul, but it no longer felt like it was consuming her. It was an enemy, and she was a warrior of life, ready to face it. Their journey was interrupted by a flicker of movement. From behind a petrified tree stepped a figure in the black uniform of Kageyama's followers. But this one was different. The fanatic from the exams had been cold. But this man was a vortex of emptiness. His eyes were black, bottomless pits, and the very air around him seemed to warp and shimmer. He has given me a sliver of the truth, the man said. His voice a discordant chorus of whispers. The truth of silence. Your bonds are a lie. A weakness. Let me show you. He didn't attack with ninjutsu. He raised a hand, and the world twisted. Akari suddenly saw Naruto standing before her, his face a mask of cold disappointment. Your fire is a liability, Akari. You are too reckless. You will get us all killed. Yumi saw her father, his face stern. You have failed again, daughter. Your precious team is dead, and it is your flawed strategy that led them here. Sake saw her own reflection, but her eyes were black and empty. Her skin cracked like the bark of a dead tree. You are a vessel for the blight. You will be the end of everything. The illusions were perfect, tailored to their deepest insecurities. But they were Naruto's students. They had already faced these fears. Lies. Akari roared, and this time, her fire wasn't an attack. It was a declaration. A massive wave of pure, white-hot flame erupted from her body. An explosive shield that incinerated the illusions. It wasn't an unfocused rage, it was the controlled, defiant roar of her will. The man took a step back, his eyes widening in surprise. Yumi was already moving. His jutsu targets our perception. Sake, disrupt his chakra flow. Akari, on my lead. She commanded, her voice cutting through the lingering confusion. Sake slammed her hands on the dead ground. There was no life to control. So she improvised. Petrified roots, as hard as stone, shot up from the earth, not to ensnare the man, but to shatter the ground around him, forcing him off balance. In that single moment of instability, Yumi unleashed her attack. Water style. Syrup trap. A torrent of thick, sticky water shot from her mouth, not to harm, but to immobilize. It coated the man, holding him fast. Now, Akari, Yumi yelled. Akari appeared above him, her descent like a meteor. She didn't use a fist. She used her whole body, focusing her fire into a single, concussive, non-lethal explosion that impacted the trapped man and knocked him unconscious without burning him. The entire fight had lasted 5 seconds. It was a perfect, synchronized symphony of their individual strengths, a testament to their absolute trust in one another. Naruto, who had been about to intervene, simply watched with a grim smile. They hadn't needed him. They had become their own anchor. They left He man bound to a dead tree and pressed on, the air growing colder, the pressure of the Ona's aura becoming a physical weight. Finally, through the gray mist, they saw it. The Shrine of Silence. It was a nightmare carved from black stone. It wasn't built. It looked as though it had been vomited up from the blighted earth. The architecture was wrong, with angles that seemed to defy geometry and AC. Entral spire that clawed at the sky like a skeletal finger. There were no doors, no windows, just a gaping, dark maw of an entrance that seemed to inhale the very light. The hum of despair was a deafening roar here, a silent scream that promised oblivion. At the entrance, a figure stood waiting for them, his plain archivist's uniform a stark, mundane contrast to the cosmic horror behind him. It was Kageyama. He was smiling, and he was alone. "Welcome, Uzumaki," he said, his voice calm, polite, and utterly chilling. "You've brought the final keys. Please, come in. The ceremony is about to begin." Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. The line between love and duty. The maw of the Shrine of Silence did not lead into a building, it led into a lie. The moment they crossed the threshold, the dead, gray forest vanished, replaced by a twisting, impossible architecture that defied all logic. Corridors of polished black stone stretched into infinity, reflecting their distorted forms. The floor would occasionally ripple like water, and the ceiling was a swirling vortex of starless night. Gravity was a suggestion, not a law, sometimes pulling them sideways towards a wall, other times threatening to abandon them to the void above. Whispers slithered from the stone itself, weaving around them like smoke. They were not just sounds, but feelings, each one a needle of doubt aimed at the heart. "You're not strong enough," the whispers hissed in Akari's ear, sounding chillingly like her own voice. "Your fire is a candle in a hurricane. You will fail them. Your logic is a cage," they murmured to Yumi. "You see every path to failure. But you cannot compute a victory that is born from the heart. You will lead them to their doom. You are a vessel of the blight," they sang to Sake, a sweet, poisonous lullaby. "You carry the seed of its decay. You will be its instrument of rebirth. You will poison everything you love." The girls faltered, their steps becoming hesitant. The shrine was a living weapon, its every stone and shadow designed to dismantle their resolve. "Don't listen." Naruto's voice cut through the whispers, a solid, unwavering anchor in the sea of lies. "It's the Ona's influence. It's Kageyama's last defense. He's trying to break our bond before we even reach him. Stay close. Focus on my voice. Focus on each other." He placed himself in the center of their formation, a human shield against the psychological onslaught. They drew in around him, his presence a wellspring of warmth and certainty in the chilling chaos. His hand briefly brushed Saki's, and a jolt of his life-affirming chakra cleared her head. He met Yumi's wavering gaze with a look of absolute confidence, and her analytical mind found its footing again. He gave Akari a sharp, determined nod, and the fire in her soul rekindled, burning away the whispers of doubt. Kageyama stood at the far end of a vast, circular chamber, its floor a perfect mirror reflecting the void above. He was not preparing for a fight. He simply stood there, waiting. "Impressive," he said, his calm voice echoing in the vast space. "You hold to your bonds, even in a place designed to unravel them. But the very nature of this shrine is to test such convictions. It demands a sacrifice of all who enter. To reach me, you must first face the truth of yourselves. Alone." As he spoke, The mirrored floor beneath the girls rippled. 3 vortexes of black energy erupted, swallowing them whole before they could even cry out. One moment they were there, a united front around their sensei. The next, they were gone. What did you do? Naruto roared, the golden chakra of the 9 tails flaring to life around him, bathing the chamber in a furious, defiant light. I have done nothing, Kageyama said, his composure unshaken by the display of immense power. The shrine has simply separated them to weigh their hearts. While we wait for the verdict, let us talk, Uzumaki. Man to man, symbol to symbol, the chamber dissolved around them, replaced by a vision of the past. They stood on a rain-swept battlefield, looking down at the broken body of Jiraiya, impaled and sinking into the dark water. Look, Kageyama said, his voice soft, almost sympathetic. The bond of student and master. A beautiful thing. It gave you strength, purpose. And its breaking shattered you. Your love for him led only to your suffering. The scene shifted. They were in the chaos of the 4th Great Ninja War. Neji Hyuga stood before Naruto, a serene smile on his face as wooden spikes burst from his chest. The bond of comrades, Kageyama continued, his voice a steady, logical scalpel. He died for you, a noble sacrifice, born from his duty to protect you, his friend. His life, his potential, extinguished for the sake of a bond. A chain that led him to his grave. The scene shifted one last time. The Valley of the End. A teenage Naruto stood opposite Sasuke Uchiha, their most powerful jutsu clashing, tearing the world apart around them. And this, Kageyama murmured, is the bond of brothers. The most powerful of all. It drove you to the ends of the earth, forced you to endure endless pain, all to save a boy who did not want to be saved. It nearly destroyed you both. It nearly destroyed the world. Every tragedy, every drop of blood, every tear you have ever shed can be traced back to a single source: attachment. Love, duty. They are not strengths, Uzumaki. They are the seeds of all conflict. I offer an end to that. A world of silence, of peace, where no one can ever be hurt by a broken bond again, because no bonds will exist. Naruto stood silent through the visions. His chakra a steady, unwavering flame. The pain of the memories was real, a phantom ache in his soul. But it was an old pain, a scar he had long since learned to carry. You're wrong, Naruto said, his voice quiet but absolute. The visions shattered, and they were back in the black, empty chamber. You see the pain, but you don't see what came after. Jiraiya's death taught me what it means to carry on a legacy. Neji's sacrifice gave us the will to win the war. My fight with Sasuke, it created a bond that was stronger than hatred, one that helped heal the world. The pain is real, Kageyama. But it's not the end of the story. The pain is the price we pay for the strength those bonds give us. It's the proof that they mattered. I would walk through all of it again, 1,000 times over. If it meant I could protect the people I love. Your silence isn't peace, it's oblivion. Kageyama sighed, a sound of genuine disappointment. A pity. You cling to your chains. Then let us see if your students are as resolute. Akari found herself in a world of molten rock and roaring flame. Power surged through her, 1,000 times greater than anything she had ever felt. It was intoxicating. A figure made of shadow rose before her, and she reacted on instinct, unleashing a torrent of fire. The figure was vaporized instantly. But as the flames died down, she saw it hadn't been a monster. It had been Sake. Another figure charged her, and she struck again, her power a wild, uncontrollable thing. It had been Yumi. Finally, a third figure appeared, walking through the flames toward her, his hand outstretched. Naruto. She tried to pull back, to stop the inferno, but she couldn't. The fire, her fire, consumed him. She screamed, falling to her knees in a world of her own making. The ashes of her loved ones swirling around her. This is your nature, a voice whispered. You are a destroyer, but you can be saved. Accept this seal. It will dampen your power, keep you forever in check. You will be weaker, but you will never hurt anyone again. A spectral seal floated before her, glowing with a cold, calming light. It promised safety, control, an end to her fear. She looked at her hands, the source of so much destructive power. Then she thought of Naruto's words. Focus the fire. It's your will. No, she snarled, getting to her feet. My fire is not a curse. It's a part of me. And my will is to protect them. Not to fear myself. She slammed her fists together, not to attack, but to focus. I trust my friends. I trust my sensei. And I trust myself. With a roar of pure defiance, she focused all the terrifying, overwhelming power not into an attack, but into a single, tiny, perfectly controlled flame on the tip of her finger, just as he had taught her. The world of fire shattered around her. Yumi stood before a tactical map, the sounds of battle raging outside the tent. Before her stood a grim-faced general. Commander Mizushima, the general said, his voice flat. The enemy's flank is exposed. But only for the next 90 seconds. Strike Team Alpha is in position to exploit it. Their success will turn the tide of this war and save thousands of lives. What is the complication? Yumi asked, her voice cold. To create the opening, Strike Team Bravo must engage the enemy's main force in a suicidal diversion. Their survival probability is 0. The general slid 3 photographs onto the map. Akari, grinning defiantly. Sake, her smile gentle and kind. Naruto, his expression resolute. Strike Team Bravo. The choice is yours, Commander, a voice echoed in her mind. Logic dictates the path. The lives of thousands outweigh the lives of 3. Make the sacrifice. It is your duty. Her mind screamed at her. The calculation was simple. The conclusion, unavoidable. The greatest good. This was the Mizushima way. The cold, relentless calculus of victory. She looked at the faces. The fiery heart that pushed her to be better. The gentle soul that taught her. There was more to strength than strategy. The unshakable will that had shown her the limits of logic. No, she said, her voice clear and absolute. She swept the photographs off the map. The logic is flawed. It treats my team as acceptable losses. They are not variables in an equation. They are the reason we fight. She looked the general in the eye, her gaze like ice. My team is not a sacrifice. They are my path to victory. We will find another way. The tent, the general, the sounds of war, they all dissolved like mist in the morning sun. Sake was in a garden. The air was warm, the light was soft, and life bloomed in a riot of color and fragrance around her. There was no pain here. No fear. No cold, dead silence. A gentle, formless voice spoke to her, not with words, but with feelings of pure contentment and peace. You have suffered enough, little one, it soothed. The world of men is full of pain and strife. Your empathy is a curse there, a conduit for their suffering. But here, you can be at peace. You can nurture this garden. You can live in perfect harmony. All you must do is let go. Forget the pain. Forget the struggle. Forget them. Images of her team flickered in her mind. Akari's loud laugh, Yumi's rare small smile, Naruto's warm, steady gaze. The memories felt distant, painful. The voice was right. They were attachments, sources of worry and fear. Letting them go would be so easy. A final, perfect peace. She reached out to touch a luminous, perfect flower. Its petals felt like forgetting. She thought of Naruto holding her as she sobbed at the base of the dying Shinju-sama. His strength, his belief in her. It wasn't the memory of pain she recalled, but the memory of the bond that had gotten her through it. Love wasn't the source of suffering. It was the cure. She pulled her hand back. Peace at the cost of love isn't peace, she whispered. It's just another kind of silence. The garden withered, its beautiful colors turning to gray ash, and then vanished. Akari crashed back into the black chamber, gasping for breath, the phantom smell of ash in her nostrils. She saw Naruto, kneeling on one knee, his golden chakra flickering weakly. He was panting, sweat beading on his brow. The psychological battle with Kageyama having taken a visible toll. The sight of him, so powerful, so unbreakable, brought to his knees by an enemy he couldn't punch, ignited a fierce, protective inferno in her chest. Kageyama was gone, having retreated deeper into the shrine. Sensei, she cried, rushing to his side. He looked up, his eyes weary but clear. Akari, you're back. You broke through. I'm here, she said, her voice thick with emotion. The vision of his death, even a false one, had shaken her to her core. The relief of seeing him alive, the fear of losing him, her deep, burning admiration, it all coalesced into a single, overwhelming wave that she couldn't hold back any longer. I was so scared, she choked out, her usual bravado gone, replaced by a raw, desperate honesty. I was so scared I'd lose you. Not just as a sensei. Her breath hitched. The words tumbled out, unbidden, unstoppable. Sensei, I love you. The declaration hung in the unnatural, silent air of the shrine. As loud and shocking as an explosion. At that exact moment, Yumi and Sake materialized back in the chamber, their own trials overcome. They froze, taking in the scene. Naruto, weakened and on one knee, Akari. Her face streaked with tears, her heart laid bare in that one, shattering sentence. Naruto looked at Akari, her fiery, passionate heart so open and vulnerable. He then looked past her and saw Yumi. Her icy composure cracked, her eyes wide with a silent, mirrored confession. He saw Sake, her hands pressed to her chest, her gentle face filled with a deep, ing love that was as plain as the rising sun. He saw it all, the truth they had all been carrying, now laid bare in this place of lies. He pushed himself to his feet, his strength slowly returning. He placed a firm, steady hand on Akari's shoulder. His touch was not dismissive, nor was it an embrace. It was grounding. Akari, he said, his voice low and serious, but gentle. I hear you. He looked at the other two, including them in his words. And I care about all of you more than you know. You're my team. You're my precious people. His gaze hardened, turning from them to the dark corridor leading deeper into the shrine. But right now, Kageyama is in the heart of this place, trying to unmake our world. Your feelings, my feelings, none of it will matter if we fail. We have a duty to finish. He looked back at them. His eyes filled not with the awkwardness of a man confronted with an unwanted confession, but with the resolute fire of a commander rallying his soldiers. Let's talk about this after we save the world. It wasn't a rejection. It wasn't an acceptance. It was a promise and a command, all in one. He was drawing a line in the sand. On one side was love, complex and personal. On the other was duty, absolute and universal. He was asking them which side they stood on in this moment. Akari wiped the tears from her eyes, her expression shifting from vulnerable to fierce. Yumi's composure returned, now forged into a harder, sharper resolve. Saki's gentle demeanor was overlaid with a quiet, unbreakable strength. They looked at each other, a new, unspoken understanding passing between them. The secret was out, the dynamic was changed forever. But the mission remained. They stood as one, their answer clear. They chose duty. They chose him. They turned and followed him into the darkness. Their hearts beating with a chaotic, unresolved rhythm, but their steps perfectly in sync, ready to face the end of the world together. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. The Unsealing. The heart of the shrine was a vast, cavernous sphere that felt less like a room and more like the inside of a dead god's skull. At its center, on a raised dais of black, glassy stone, Kageyama stood before a pulsating, amorphous mass of shadow and silence. It was the Ona's physical form, a wound in reality, barely contained by the crumbling, glowing seals that snaked across the dais. The air was so thick with malevolent energy it was difficult to breathe, a pressure that squeezed the lungs and crushed the spirit. Kageyama turned as they entered, a serene, almost beatific smile on his face. He was no longer the unassuming archivist. Power radiated from him in cold, dark waves. The black, empty chakra of the Oni had seeped into him, turning his eyes into pits of starless night. He had become the vessel. You have arrived, he said. His voice now a calm, passionless echo. Just in time to bear witness. The final seal is weakening. Soon, the great silence will wash over the world, and all pointless noise of emotion will be erased. It's not too late, Kageyama. Naruto called out, his voice ringing with a desperate conviction. Whatever the Oni has promised you, it's a lie. This isn't peace, it's annihilation. On the contrary, Kageyama replied, raising a hand towards the pulsating shadow. It is truth. I have seen it. A world without grief, because there is no love. A world without betrayal, because there is no loyalty. A world without war, because there is no will to fight. It is perfect. He had gone too far. He was no longer a man with a twisted ideology, he was a prophet for oblivion. There was no reasoning with him. Team 13, Naruto said, his voice low and hard. This is it. No holding back. Yumi, analysis. Akari, Sake, On my lead. We stop him now. They exploded into action. Naruto shot forward, a blur of yellow, a Rasengan already howling in his hand. Akari was right beside him, her entire body wreathed in a vortex of white-hot flame, a human meteor aimed at the dais. Kageyama simply raised his free hand. He didn't weave signs. He didn't gather chakra. He just gestured. Sever. A wave of invisible, razor-sharp energy shot out. It wasn't ninjutsu. It was something else, something fundamental. It didn't target Naruto's body. It targeted the bond between him and Kurama. For a horrifying instant, Naruto felt the familiar, blazing warmth of the Nine Tails chakra vanish. As if a switch had been flipped. His Rasengan sputtered and died. The immense power he had always taken for granted was gone, leaving him feeling hollow, shockingly mortal. The sudden loss of momentum sent him stumbling. His attack utterly broken. The wave hit Akari a moment later. It wasn't her chakra it targeted, but her connection to it. The inferno surrounding her was instantly extinguished, leaving her hurtling through the air, powerless. She crashed onto the stone floor with a sickening thud, the wind knocked out of her. This is the power of the Oni, Kageyama said, his voice a calm lecture. The power to break the chains. I have severed your connection to the demon that defines you, Uzumaki. I have severed this child's bond with her own inner fire. You are just men now. And you are nothing. Yumi and Sake, who had been preparing a coordinated follow-up, froze in horror. They had just witnessed their two most powerful offensive weapons neutralized with a single, effortless gesture. It's a Kekkei Genkei. Yumi breathed, her mind racing, analyzing the impossible. Amplified by the Ona's power. It doesn't destroy chakra, it severs the user's ability to access it. A conceptual attack, Kageyama smiled. The Mizushima girl, always so perceptive. Yes, my family has always had the ability to sever minor bonds, the threads of a puppet, the connection of a shadow jutsu. But with the Ona's grace, I can now sever the most fundamental bonds of all. The bond between a man and his power. The bond between a team and their trust. Watch. He gestured again, this time at Yumi and Sake. The wave of severing energy washed over them. They didn't lose their chakra, but something far more vital. The unspoken, instinctive connection they shared, the synergy they had honed through countless battles, was gone. When Yumi glanced at Sake to signal a maneuver, she felt nothing. The channel of perfect understanding that had always been there was now just static. They were no longer a cohesive unit. They were three individuals standing in a room. You see, Kageyama said, turning his attention back to the weakening seal. Your greatest strength was a lie. Now, you'll face the end as you truly are, alone. Naruto pushed himself to his feet, his mind reeling. Kurama was still there, a furious, caged beast in the back of his mind, but the link, the pipeline of power, was gone. He was back to being the genin who had struggled to form a proper clone. But he was not that boy anymore. He was a Jonin of the Leaf. A master of taijutsu, a sage. You think my bond with Kurama is all I am? Naruto snarled, a feral grin spreading across his face. He slammed his hands together. You've made a fatal mistake. He drew in the natural energy of the world, a power that existed outside of himself. The red markings of sage mode appeared around his eyes. He wasn't at full power, not without Kurama's chakra to balance the energy, but he was far from helpless. Sage art. Frog Kata. He exploded forward again, but this time, he was a different kind of weapon. He wasn't a tsunami of power, he was a river stone, perfectly smooth and impossibly hard. His movements were a blur, his fists and feet surrounded by an aura of natural energy that extended his reach and amplified his striking power. He didn't need a Rasengan. Every blow was a Rasengan. Kageyama was forced to turn from the seal, his serene composure finally cracking. He was a scholar. A manipulator, not a taijutsu master. He parried Naruto's relentless assault, his movements clumsy compared to Naruto's fluid grace. A frog Kata punch connected with his shoulder, and even though Kageyama blocked it with a chakra-infused arm, the invisible aura of sage energy slammed into him, sending him skidding back across the dais. His arm hanging limp at his side. You're just delaying the inevitable. Kageyama grunted, pain and surprise in his voice. He flicked his good hand, and a half-dozen black receivers, like the ones used by Pain. shot from his sleeve, aimed at Naruto. Before they could hit, a wall of wood, dense and powerful, erupted from the stone floor, blocking them. Sake stood with her hands pressed to the ground, her face a mask of concentration. Her bond with her team might be severed, but her bond with the life of the world was her own. Our teamwork isn't a jutsu you can break, Kageyama, Yumi declared. She had adapted instantly. With their psychic link gone, she had reverted to verbal commands, her voice sharp and clear. Akari, now, leg sweep. Akari, recovering from her crash, couldn't summon her flames. But she was still a formidable taijutsu fighter. She reacted instantly to Yumi's command, dropping low and sweeping her leg in a powerful arc, aiming for Kageyama's feet as he was distracted by Naruto and Sake. The attack was clumsy, lacking their usual perfect synergy. Saki's wall had been a fraction of a second too slow, and one of the black receivers had grazed Naruto's arm, disrupting his sage mode. Akari's sweep was telegraphed, and Kageyama easily leapt over it. But it didn't matter. For that one moment, they had worked together. Not through an innate, magical bond, but through a conscious choice. Through trust. Kageyama landed, a sneer on his face. A pathetic, clumsy effort. You see, without your bonds, you are nothing. No, Naruto said, breathing heavily as he struggled to re-enter sage mode. You're the one who doesn't get it. A bond isn't some magic you can just cut. It's a promise. A choice we make, over and over again, to trust each other. To fight for each other. He looked at his team, at their bruised, determined faces. It doesn't matter if we can't feel each other's intentions. I know Akari will always charge forward. I know Yumi will always have a plan. I know Sake will always protect us. That's a bond you can't sever. His words were a clarion call. Something shifted in the chamber. The trust they had in him, and now, in each other, was a power Kageyama's jutsu couldn't touch. Yumi, give us a plan. Naruto commanded. Yumi's eyes darted around the room, taking in every detail. His Kekkei Genkai is a wave. It has a range, and it requires his focus. Sake, you are the key. Your wood style is the only thing that can physically interfere with the Ona's energy. Akari, you and Sensei are the diversion. You need to press him, force him to focus on you. Do not let him turn his attention back to the seal. It was a desperate, long-shot plan, but it was all they had. Naruto and Akari charged again. No jutsu, just pure, relentless taijutsu. They became a whirlwind of orange and red, forcing Kageyama back, their punches and kicks a furious, desperate storm. He was stronger now, infused with the Ona's power, and he met their assault with a cold, brutal efficiency. But he was on the defensive, his concentration entirely on the two warriors in front of him. Now, Sake, Yumi yelled. Sake took a deep breath, plunging her hands into the cold, dead stone of the dais. She didn't try to create life. She reached for a deeper power, the fundamental connection between wood, earth, and seal. Wood style. Adamantine sealing chains. It was a technique of the Uzumaki clan. One she should not have known. But through her connection to the first Hokage's cells, through her own desperate will, she manifested it. Chains made of pure, hardened wood, glowing with a faint green energy and covered in sealing script, erupted from the dais. They didn't attack Kageyama. They shot past him, wrapping around the pulsating, amorphous mass of the Oni, reinforcing the failing seals. The Oni let out a silent, psychic scream that shook the very foundations of the shrine. It had been moments from freedom. Kageyama roared in fury, a sound of pure, inhuman rage. The serene prophet was gone, replaced by a monster. You will not deny me. He ignored Naruto and Akari, spinning around to blast Sake with his severing jutsu. But Yumi was ready. Water style. Water prison jutsu. A sphere of dense water materialized around Kageyama, trapping him. It was a desperate move. She knew she couldn't hold him for long. He's breaking free, she grunted, the strain showing on her face. We need more power. Akari yelled, trying and failing to summon her flames. Naruto looked at the scene. Yumi's failing prison, Saki's struggling chains, Akari's powerless fury. They had bought him a moment. But it wasn't enough. There was only one option left. He had to reconnect with Kurama. He closed his eyes, ignoring the battle raging around him, and journeyed inward. He found the severed link. Afraid, dead thing. But he also found Kurama, a roaring inferno of hatred and loyalty on the other side. They couldn't share chakra, but they could still share will. Kurama, he sent, a thought, a feeling, a desperate plea. He broke the chain. But a bond is more than a chain. It's a promise. We are partners. Help me. A memory flooded his mind. Him and Sasuke, at the Valley of the End. Their arms blown off, their blood mingling on the stone. The seal of reconciliation. It wasn't about power. It was about acknowledging a shared path, a shared pain. He understood. He flashed a single-hand sign. The one he had made with Sasuke so long ago. The sign of reconciliation. He wasn't trying to force the connection. He was offering it anew. On the other side of the broken link, Kurama responded. A wave of pure, absolute trust, of shared history and battle-forged camaraderie, flowed back. The severed link didn't just mend. It reforged, stronger than before, tempered by the very power that had tried to break it. Golden, blazing chakra erupted from Naruto, so powerful it shattered Yumi's water prison and sent Kageyama flying. The Kurama chakra mode was back, more brilliant, more powerful than ever. Hey, Naruto said, his voice now a low, rumbling harmony with the nine tails. He cracked his knuckles, a grin of pure, feral joy on his face. Let's try this again. But Kageyama was laughing, a wild, broken sound. As he flew back, his body slammed into the dais. The impact, combined with the Ona's furious thrashing against Saki's chains, was the final straw. The ancient seals shattered. With a final, deafening roar of silence, the black, amorphous mass exploded outwards. Saki's chains were obliterated. The darkness washed over Kageyama, consuming him, dissolving his physical form into the roiling shadow. The unsealing was complete. The Oni of silence was free. And its power, a wave of pure, nihilistic emptiness, surged out, ready to wash over the world. Chapter 9 End.